France. It's been a much awaited individual time trial, and as stated by the tour director, the race must go on. It's into the Ardèche today. The wind will be blowing once again. The course is tough. Individual time trial day starting in Bourg-Saint-Denis, making its way through to Le Caverne de Pont-d'Arc. It's 37.5 kilometres, and this is anything but flat. It's not a mountain stage against the clock, but it is lumpy. A 7-kilometre climb to get things started, across the plateau, descent, and then climb through to the finish.
Now racing up towards the finish here. The clock will come into play. He's already conceded 2.5 minutes to the day's possible winner in Tom Dumoulin, but he's more concerned about the arrival. I think he's going to concede over 2 minutes to Chris Froome with this performance, and that for him will be simply very, very bad, and probably will lose him the Tour de France. As he comes into the home straight now, he's racing for 15th place. It'll slip away. It's a long way up to the finish here.
Yeah, well, Phil, don't count him out quite so far away from Paris, because the next individual time trial is a mountain time trial, which could give him the advantage over Chris Froome.
I love your optimism, Paul. As we watch here, Tom Dumoulin's time get well to the better of 3 minutes and 7 seconds, conceded to Quintana, by Quintana. Now, the big thing is, what has Yates done? And that's the most important thing. He's the next man to finish.
Here he is, Phil, out on the course. So Yates just hugging the barriers, getting in there as close as he can to shorten the distance around those corners. Once again, once the pain and the speed starts to drop away, gets out of the saddle, forcing himself to find every last little bit of energy.
Well, Mollema has climbed over Quintana in the overall classification with that ride. Bardet will not have improved. He's slower than Quintana. Well, enjoying an early tea, I think, Tom Dumoulin, because he knows now he must be worried about Froome, because Froome was only 40-odd seconds down at the last check, and if he's climbed this hill really well, he'll be very close to his time. But a quick calculation at 3 kilometres to go, I'm not sure he could get up in the time he had left.
Well, it would be one of those amazing comebacks, because in fact Froome, although he's improved his position at each of the individual time checks, his time deficit to Tom Dumoulin was further and further back. At 10 seconds to begin with, then 17 seconds, then 48 seconds. And 48 seconds is an awful large amount to pull back in the final kilometre of this climb.
Adam Yates continues. Remember, he's a British rider riding for an Australian team, Orica Bike Exchange. They lost their leader yesterday in Simon Guerin, the leader on the road, the team captain. He crashed, went out of the Tour for the 3rd time in his career with a crash injury, a broken collarbone. This man now is the team leader and having to ride for that team. As he comes up towards the finish now, he's looking at 7th, 8th. It's a long way up this home straight for Adam Yates. But hey, the first good news is Chris Froome never caught him. The next good news is I think his time's going to be pretty good.
And maybe the other piece of good news to throw in there, Phil, is he will actually extend his lead in the Best Young Rider competition, because he's gone faster than every other rider less than 25 years of age, and that's what that competition is all about.
This white jersey could be taken all the way to Paris, and that would be some terrific award. Yates is coming up now. The places are slipping away. It's all about time, not places. Just going to be on 53 minutes, conceding shortly 3 minutes to Tom Dumoulin. 21. Adam Yates is going to get inside that, approximately 53.21. 3 Quintana's time. Beats Quintana 53.16. And straight into the straight now. It's still a little way. Is the drive 3 minutes behind Adam Yates. He's now closing it down. He's probably picked back more than 2 minutes, which would put him around a long 50-minute ride here for Chris Froome. He hasn't won the day, but my goodness me, he may have won the Tour de France with a week to go, because he is building on his overall lead with this finish. He can see the clock now as he looks up and finds a few more seconds. He's racing for the second best time here, which is 51.46, and he's gonna just about get inside the time of Oliveira. And that'll do him, because it means he's ahead of every one of his competitors in this year's Tour de France. He gained time on them yesterday with a little help from the judges, and he gains time on them today with a little help from his legs.
Well, there you go, a proficiat coming from Benny Koelen there, a former well-known journalist from Holland. And proficiat, if you don't speak Dutch, means congratulations. So congratulations to Tom Dumoulin, who gets himself a second stage victory. But for Chris Froome, finishing in second place on the stage with that performance, he will extend his lead over everybody else in the overall classification tonight. And it looks very much as if Bauke Mollema will move up into second place with his ride this afternoon. And Adam Yates should just hold on to third place as he extended his lead over Nairo Quintana. But this man was the man who set the bar over all of the time checks. The fastest at 4.3 miles into the race, 7 kilometers. Fastest at 18 kilometers, then at 28 kilometers. Then when he came up to the finishing line, he was faster than everybody else. And more importantly, he got across the line to win himself that second stage and maybe start to put a little bit of a line between here and Rio de Janeiro, because one thing he's dreaming about is trying to win the individual time trial in Rio in a couple of weeks' time at the Olympic Games. But more importantly, Froome extends his lead in the overall classification as we look our way down on the River Ardèche and the beautiful gorges here. 103 the difference between the first two, and 131 back to Nelson Oliveira. And as a reference, by the way, a 4 times national champion of Portugal in the individual time trial and a teammate to Nairo Quintana.
From a victory in Andorra already on the Tour de France, but this is really what you came from, mission accomplished, a winner on the time trial.
Yeah, you're speaking with, at one side, a very happy man, and at one side, a very, very sad. It's a very sad day, and yeah, I woke up to the terrible news from Nice, and it was a very just question, I think, whether we should race or not today. And at the end, I think also a very just decision to race. I think we cannot let terrorists decide our lives here in our society. But yeah, it's terrible what happened, and it shadows the day a bit, or not only a bit, but a lot. And I think that's yeah, that's the only right thing. And yeah, so you're speaking with a two-faced man today. Of course, I'm happy with the win. It's what I came for in this Tour de France. At the same time, my thoughts are with everyone involved in the yeah, horrific attack in Nice.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, quite right. And this is how he did it. Put the memories of that tragedy in Nice to the back of his mind and concentrated on the job in hand. Went out on the course, and he caught, first of all, Luis Leon Sanchez, himself a very respectable former time trial champion of Spain. And when he came up to the line, he'd set the bar exceptionally high at every individual time check. The fastest man all the way out on the course, and he went faster than Nelson Oliveira, the early leader. But setting that bar at 27.8 miles an hour, and that's around about 54 kilometers an hour at 50 minutes and 15 seconds. There were not very many men in this world could have gone faster than that, but he beat Chris Froome, the defending Tour de France champion, by 1:03. Rowan Dennis of Australia crept into the top 5 there with a 5th place, so 1:41 back, and that's a very good reference. Bauke Mollema, brilliant ride, the best of all of the other contenders in 6th place, and Geraint Thomas in 7th, just 2 minutes flat behind. Tony Martin, a 3-time world time trial champion, in 9th place, and Steve Cummings in 10th place at 2 minutes 24 seconds.
Well, there's the situation, and it looks as though Chris Froome tonight's going to lead by nearly 2 minutes in the Tour de France after an outstanding ride, and what we must say is a collapse by the challengers in this rather short time trial of 23.3 miles or 37.5 kilometres. Well, that's the situation on the Tour de France, and what has been a very, very sad day for the world, not just for France. Let's go back to Matthew Keenan.
Well spoken by Tom Dumoulin at the end of the stage. It's a bittersweet day for Tom Dumoulin. He achieved what he came to the Tour de France to achieve, but it's certainly been put into context by what happened in Nice just last night. Here's a look at the general classification. This is the general classification before today's stage got underway. So this has certainly changed because Adam Yates is not 47 seconds behind Chris Froome. Chris Froome has extended his lead, and Bauke Mollema, with his performance today, has climbed up the general classification. In fact, there's quite a significant shuffling of the top 10. And a good performance by TJ Van Garderen today. He's moved himself up a little bit in the overall standings. Likewise, Richie Porte. Romain Bardet, well, he fought well in the time trial, which is a discipline that he normally loses big chunks of time in. Fabio Aru, it looked disastrous at that final intermediate time check, but he came home so strongly. So I'm looking forward to seeing confirmation of the top 10 in the overall standings. Stage result, Chris Froome was certainly the best of the men racing for the general classification, and of his nearest rivals in terms of that battle for yellow, Bauke Mollema was in 6th position on the stage, and Chris Froome managed to gap him by an extra 51 seconds. So he has more than a 1 minute and 50 second advantage over Bauke Mollema, who I think has moved up to 2nd place. Here it is, 1:47 the gap to Bauke Mollema, 2:45 to Adam Yates. It's then Nairo Quintana at almost 3 minutes. Valverde, followed by Van Garderen. It's then Bardet at 4:04. Porte moves into the top 10. Dan Martin is in 9th position, and Fabio Aru has slipped to 10th at 5 minutes and 16 seconds behind. Hello and welcome to stage 14 of the Tour de France. This is Matthew Keenan with you, where today all the action kicks off in Montélimar. Chris Froome now leads Bauke Mollema, who's moved up to 2nd position. It's a 1 minute and 47 second gap between those two. It's then Adam Yates with Nairo Quintana at almost 3 minutes behind. Yesterday, no formal podium presentation as we normally see. There was a minute's silence paying tribute to the victims of the attack in Nice. Stage 14, and as you can see from the map, it is virtually directly north, starting in Montélimar, making its way through to the Parc d'Oiseaux. A blockhead wind throughout the stage, and the last of our stages of more than 200 kilometres. 208 kilometres. In fact, the second last. There's another one to come as we go to Switzerland. Clear blue skies getting the race underway. 5 stages this year of more than 200 kilometres, and there was a minute's silence once again at the start of the stage today with all the riders together, and Christian Prudhomme wearing the black armband as he did yesterday. It was a sombre mood on the Tour de France yesterday. It was a strange atmosphere, in fact, and for good reason, as the Tour did what it could to pay its respects to those that lost their lives and their families, of course, in Nice. This is the situation of the race. Breakaway group of 4 riders out to an advantage of 4 minutes and 46 seconds. It's quite a strong group. At the back of the group, this is Jeremy Waugh from the FDJ team. Just in front of him is Cesare Benedetti from Bora Argon 18. In the green colours from Cannondale Drapac, it's Alex Howes. And the most experienced in the group, number 74 from IM Cycling, the Swiss rider Martin Alminger. Martin Alminger at the back of the group is the best placed in the overall standings. 1 hour, 31 minutes and 38 seconds behind Chris Froome. So the responsibility to contain this breakaway won't be falling to Sky and the yellow jersey holder of Froome. It will be for the teams of the sprinters, those that think that this is their chance to get the win. Arguably, the rider is Andre Greipel, and it's his birthday today. 34 years of age, so happy birthday to Andre Greipel. Romans-sur-Isère, the small town that which is the home of Philippe Saint-André, who's the former captain of the French rugby team. He was the captain of the French rugby team from 2011 through to 2015. The Jacquemart Tower that we're now getting a chance to take a look at. The tower overlooking the town since 1429. It stands at some 37 metres tall. And that jack of the clocks that you can see on there, there's still around about 50 of these remaining in France, but this is the biggest one. It stands at 2.6 metres tall. It's also the oldest. It's been a slow start to the stage because of the headwind and, of course, the accumulated fatigue of the battle that they've had over the past few days with vicious crosswinds, which have made the racing very dangerous. So although the headwind makes for a long stage, I'm sure there's a fair few riders that are quite relieved about the headwind, as the headwind makes the racing conditions safer. Much safer than a tailwind or a crosswind, particularly the crosswind. Another chance to take a look at this tower with the jack of the clocks, which stands alongside the big bell. The tower dates back to 1429, but the jack of the clocks is a lot younger than that. It's only a few hundred years old. None of the riders in this breakaway group of four have been stage winners at the Tour de France in the past, and they know that their odds of upsetting the sprinters today are slim, but they were never going to win the stage if they just stayed back in the peloton. So this is their best chance. Benedetti at the back of the group, we saw him in the breakaway on stage 2. That was the breakaway that almost made it, when we were saying exactly what I just said. They don't have much of a chance. 33.15 kilometres the average speed so far on the stage. Benedetti in the black colours from Bora Argon 18. He was in the break with Jesper Stuyven when we saw Jesper attack his breakaway companions and get caught with just 450 metres to go. It was Peter Sagan who went on to win the stage ahead of Julien Alaphilippe. And it's the three teams of the big sprinters who are doing the chasing at this point. Dimension Data, edX Quickstep and Lotto Soudal. You can then see the full contingent of the men in black, the Sky Squad, looking after the yellow jersey of Chris Froome. They're not doing any chasing. They're saving as many of their resources as possible as we're back into the mountains tomorrow with a big day of climbing on the agenda for stage 15.
For me, he already is the revelation of this year's Tour de France. Right up there at the moment at 2:45. Now breathing down his neck. Quintana 14 seconds behind him. Verde, another 2 seconds behind that Van Garderen. Then less than a minute back to Bardet, Richie Porte. So many big name riders, experienced riders, more mature at Grand Tour level, right behind him. If he was to hang on to his place in the GC, or even move up onto the podium, it would be an incredible performance. If he was to drop and finish 9th or 10th, I would still say he's had an incredible debut riding for GC. It's not his first tour, but his first go at trying to ride GC and taking it day by day. Whatever happens, he's had a fantastic tour.
It's been a brilliant ride by Adam Yates, but there's plenty still to come. This is Alex Howes at the front of the race, a breakaway group of 4, almost at the top of the climb. The Côte de Fort-Échaud, 1 point up for grabs in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. It's just a Category 4 climb. It's not really a contest. Alex Howes continues to set the tempo. Jeremy Waugh is not going to challenge, and it will be Alex Howes who gets 1 point added to his name in the race for the polka dot jersey.
Well, something there for Cannondale Drapac.
And he's maintained the momentum over the top. He didn't kick the clutch in, flicked the elbow as soon as he got the point. He made the statement of continuing with the pressure right at the front. This is the Chateau of Montchenu, which is a medieval chateau dating back to the 12th century and is now privately owned. And you can see the old fortress wall around the outside of it. A lot of it has been dismantled over the centuries, but the chateau itself, standing right in the middle, still looks as if it is in pristine condition. And it's probably about time to get the cover off the pool and go for a swim. 26 degrees this afternoon. Lars back at the front, followed by Natnil Bidhan. Next is Peter Vakoc. And for Team Sky, this is an ideal situation. This is a day for them almost to treat it as a recovery stage up until that last 30 or 40 kilometres where things start to intensify.
Yes, a bit of active recovery, if you can call it that, for 208.5 kilometres. I spoke about the sprinter with the best and the most well-drilled team having the best chance. Now, it's not just about the sprinters and their teams. All of the GC riders we've been speaking about over the last few minutes, them and all their teams are going to be at the front because everybody will know the wind conditions here at the finish. That final 3 kilometres, the 3 kilometre rule, we've spoken about that a number of times. If you crash or puncture, you get the time of the group you're in. But if the race just splits, you lose that time. In 3 kilometres, you may not lose much. They don't want to lose any seconds. We just spoke about how close they are from 4th through 8th at the moment. Nobody wants to lose 5 or 6 seconds. So it's going to be chaos as they turn towards the finish.
The peloton now 1 kilometre away from going over the top of this Category 4 climb. Vasily Katienko is the man at the back in the black colours of Team Sky. And they're about to start the next climb. Once they get out of this town, they're on to the next climb, which again, it's a Category 4 climb. And it's relatively short at just 2.1 kilometres. And only 1 point up for grabs in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey here. Big crowds on the side of the road once again. Martin Elminger with the bidden up, indicating he wants the team car to come up alongside him. Just drops that down for one of the spectators on the side of the road. The locals have come out in force. And all the riders have made it pretty clear after what we saw on Mont Ventoux, when a few spectators went overboard, that they love the spectators on the side of the road. And 99% of them do the right thing. They applaud, they clap everybody that comes through. And they don't want to see that change. It's just that 1% that oversteps the line every now and then. We can't forget that the stage of Mont Ventoux was also on Bastille Day, big festivities, and just maybe a few people might have indulged in the local produce of the crushed grapes that have been fermented for a little bit too long. Jeremy Waugh from FDJ stretches the legs at the front. This is Benedetti from Bora Argonne 18. The most experienced rider from this breakaway group, a former winner of the Tour Down Under. And at the back in the green colours from the Cannondale Dropout, Alex Howes. He has been with the Slipstream organisation all through its various sponsors since it started, which was way back in 2007. Rode well on home soil last year, Alex Howes, at the World Championships, finished in 12th position in the race that was won by Peter Sagan. He's had one crash already. You can still see the damage on his left arm, and he's shown his resilience by getting into the breakaway today.
Good job getting into the break. Probably not the ideal day for a breakaway, especially 4 men against the bunch on what looks to be the final chance reaches Paris on Sunday week. These riders will know they stand very little chance of making it to the finish and fighting it out for the win. But you don't know if you don't go. The Swiss rider in second position here, former winner of Tour Down Under, is always prepared to have a go. Having a go back in the peloton now is Etix Quickstep. And look at that single file line. Probably more a case of just coming down those winding roads after the KOM rather than a big increase in the pace.
And they're about to approach that small town that we've just seen the breakaway go through. It's going to be safer if it's strung out in single file. The impact of a fall is more significant because they are going faster, but it is safer.
And you see the riders also more prepared to just single out and follow the wheels because they know there's little to no danger of coming into a crosswind once they get out of that village, because the race goes in one direction, due north all day, and that Mistral wind has swung to the north since yesterday. That's why we saw the riders getting hit in the side along the time trial course, the Gorge d'Ardèche. So not as much stress in the bunch. You see the flags flying there, not completely in the face at the moment. Also looks fairly protected compared to the wind out on the rest of the course.
The past 3 stages, the flags have had the threads torn out of the end of them. It's been going that violently. Today, it is still relatively windy. We'd call it a windy day if we hadn't had the past 3 days. It's just after what there's been, this is reasonably easy.
I'd almost say the past 14 days, Matt. I think this has been the windiest tour I've ever seen. Normally we get 2 or 3 days of high winds that split the peloton. We've seen it so often in this Tour de France, from up in Normandy at the start along the coastline there, and then particularly over the last 3 days, that Mistral wind has thrown a big spanner in the works for many riders and given them a lot harder ride too. So expect to see some riders really start to struggle in the last week, because they've been expending a lot of energy on stages where they normally could just sit the wheels and ride the stage out. So it's made it a tougher tour.
This is Benedetti at the front for Bora Argon 18. He's picked up a few points throughout the race this year in the battle for the King of the Mountains jersey, but he's no challenge to Thomas de Gens. Earlier this season, he managed to win the King of the Mountains classification at Tirreno Adriatico. A big tour that starts the season, really kicks off the season in Italy in March. Jeremy Waugh, he was just backed off this group ever so slightly, and Martin Alminger was making sure that he was keeping an eye on him. He's been a stage winner, Jeremy Waugh, in Paris-Nice, which is also organised by the organisers of the Tour de France. And it always finishes, well, not always finishes, but generally has a stage finish at some point on the Promenade d'Anglais, where we saw that a tragedy on Bastille Day, with the terrorist attack in a truck. So a lot of the riders, it felt very close to home for them, particularly the English-speaking riders. Many of them, when they moved to Europe, lived in Nice or nearby in Monaco. Looks like Benedetti is going to collect the 1 point on offer this time over the top of this Category 4 climb. No challenge from Martin Alminger, the most experienced man in the group. He just lets the Italian drift forward and take the point, because Martin Alminger wants to keep this group organised. Well, this that we're looking at now by Cheval, the ideal palace of Cheval. This was built by a postman, and it took him 33 years to build it. He started by just doing a small little waterfall, and then he just continued to build. He grabbed oyster shells, little rocks from all around the area that he collected throughout his day. There's snail shells in there as well. It took him 30 years to build this, and he wanted to be buried in it, but the local municipality wouldn't allow it. They said, well, you have to be buried in the local cemetery. So then he spent another 8 years building himself his own tomb in the local cemetery. This was in the latter part of the 1800s. He started building this, which he first called a source of life, back in 1879, and he continued to work on it for 33 years. It was his ideal palace, the dream place.
And the building materials, he didn't go down to Bunnings
No.
or a hardware store or the building supplies to get what he used. Shells, snails, oysters and stones.
All collected from the local area, the stones and so on anyway.
Yes, Matt, you can see the breakaway just in that little staggered formation, offset to the right of the rider in front, just catching the ideal slipstream. So this will be a little section. It'll just push the peloton a little bit from left to right, but then it quickly changes direction again and will generally stay as a headwind until they get up to about the last 3 kilometres. Then it's all crosswind to the finish line.
And I think through that section in the peloton, there's a truce at this point. They know what is still to come. There's a big week of climbing through the mountains before they reach Paris. And Lars Bak, one of the captains of the peloton, leading the charge for Lotto Soudal. It was such a popular stage win for Lars Bak when he collected a victory at the Giro d'Italia 3 years ago. Clipped off the front, managed to win on his own. Not often he gets the chance to have the freedom to target a victory. He's part of the contingent of riders from Lotto Soudal who's extended his contract to coincide with Andre Greipel. Still Jeremy Waugh on the front. We're in number 128. His best result in the stage of the Tour de France was a third place finish. That was back in 2011 into Lord. Thor Hushoff went out, the stage winner, and that time around it was on stage 13. There's Julien Alaphilippe, number 182 at the back of the peloton for edX Quickstep. He won't have to do much work at the back end of today's stage, surely, for Marcel Kittel, after the fall that he had yesterday.
And Julien Alaphilippe, not really one of the lead-out squad within the edX Quickstep team. Looking more for Fabio Sabatini, Ilio Kesa, to help Marcel Kittel into position and lead the sprint out.
Dora Argon 18, they're in the breakaway today, but also just spotted at the back, number 135, Sam Bennett, who was in that nasty fall on stage 1 with Michael Morkov as well, who's since abandoned the race and was the first rider to head home. But he bravely fought on for almost the entire first week. I wonder if Sam Bennett today, if his legs are in a position, if his body's in a position for him to have a full-throttled attempt at the sprint finish. I hope so. He deserves to have his chance.
I hope so for him too, because after all the suffering that he's gone through to get to this point after crashing on stage 1, it'll be a nice reward for him to get a good result, or at least just for his own confidence and to make it worth all that suffering, at least get up there and be able to have a go full throttle, even if it's not a win or a top 3, just to be amongst it again.
Andre Greipel, the German national champion, one of the big favourites for the stage. The situation with Sam Bennett reminds me of Michael Matthews last year. He crashed on stage 3 and he kept plucking away, hoping that he'd recuperate and be in a position to challenge for a stage victory. He didn't quite get there, but I'm sure that that whole experience has served him really well and made him appreciate even more so the stage win this year.
It's done that, and Michael Matthews has said last year, riding through the rest of the tour after stage 3 with 4 broken ribs, the amount of suffering that he did on that tour, he said it's taught me how hard I can actually push myself physically and mentally. So anything I come up against from now on, I've got that experience that helps me. It helps me mentally to know that I can push through something like that.
Making their way through the town of Benaron. And they are still 5 kilometres away from the intermediate sprint.
Turn, but just now flicks out and lets Jeremy Waugh go through. But Elmiger, no, he flicked out and then increased the pace. Here goes Benedetti from the back.
Benedetti opens up, and that does catch Elminger by surprise. So he was closing the gate, Elminger, so as they could only go on one side. That was so as nobody could do what Benedetti did and surprise him as the Italian collects.
Not only surprised them from the back, but had the horsepower to keep opening the gap after he went. Elminger saw it pretty quickly and reacted. Did not make up 1 metre on Cesare Benedetti. Good turn of speed from the Italian. You see him short, sort of stocky build. If you're going to pick a sprinter out of the 4, he's the one you'd say is man most likely. Now, the peloton are now coming to the 1 kilometre to go banner for this sprint. Not a lot of interest just yet back in the peloton as edX Quickstep now on the left-hand side in the blue. They look like they're bringing Marcel Kittel up. And he wants to take some points, but on his wheel in green, Peter Sagan. Behind him, Mark Cavendish. Talking of Cavendish, that's not the sign of a man who's going to pull out of the Tour de France to prepare for the Rio Olympics on the track if he's still going for green jersey points. Brian Coquard is behind Cavendish.
The lead-out train for Marcel Kittel. As Peter Sagan is having a conversation with Mark Cavendish, he's looking very comfortable. Notably, Andre Greipel is missing. He is putting all his eggs in the stage win basket. Well, the others, they're just stepping out of the way and waiting for the sprint to come.
One Lotto Soudal policeman, if you like, on the back of this group, but 4 edX Quickstep riders lined up for Marcel Kittel, so a bit of a general repetition, I guess you could say, for the final sprint.
And this is Lars back just checking across in the red colours, having a look at the situation. 300 metres remaining. edX Quick Step, they start to wind things up. It's Kittel who sits in third spot. And now Peter Sagan is the first to go. Marcel Kittel has been caught slightly on the hop. 150 to go. Sagan trying to minimise the energy expenditure while still getting the points. And he collects 5th place on the intermediate sprint, followed by Kittel, then Cavendish. Next in line was Coquard. So Mark Cavendish, although he was in there and amongst it, he didn't spend any energy.
Mark Cavendish not even getting out of the saddle to take part in the sprint, just rolling in for a few points. Marcel Kittel not prepared to go from a long way out, and that provided Sagan with the opportunity to get the jump up the inside and effectively box Marcel Kittel in a little bit. He knew then it's probably a little bit late, or not too late, but if I'm going to pass him, it's going to require maximum effort, which he's not prepared to do with a stage win on the line. That's what's really important. And I don't think any of those guys really believe they can take green back off Peter Sagan, but sort of just keeping themselves in contention, almost battling for second, just in case something happens to Peter Sagan that means he cannot finish the Tour de France. Then it's an open competition between the rest, because Peter Sagan, he's increased his lead for the green jersey. Already had 90 points over Mark Cavendish. It's extended that to at least 92 now.
Well, they've made the most of this roundabout. It's like a natural theatre to be able to look down upon the peloton. This is Vicioso at the back for the Katusha team. Their team leader, Joaquim Rodriguez, he lost ground yesterday, which is no surprise. He was the worst performed of the riders battling for a top 10 finish.
And I still thought that for Joaquim Rodriguez's capabilities in the time trial, he actually did okay. He gave 4:46. That's a lot, but I've seen him do worse in the same situation in past Grand Tours. A very difficult time trial, but if you're going to be a contender for the overall, you've got to keep those sort of losses down to around 2 minutes, I would say, at the most. And I don't believe Joaquim Rodriguez can get anywhere near the podium in this Tour de France, but possibly a top 10. And once we get into the mountains, he's in his territory.
All the way past the Mont Ventoux, right towards the Bouches du Rhône before it actually gets piled out into the Mediterranean. That, by the way, just down there is the Yons Dam, Le Barrage de Yons. It's 100 meters long, and it's entirely located in the municipality of Niévron. And it is in fact built as a controlling dam for the levels of the Rhône. It was built in 1934. The main purpose is to direct the flow of water and control the levels into the Miribel Dam. The main field now crossing over and into the Département of Verlaine. 25 kilometers to go. There you can just see the dam over to the right hand side there. Quite an interesting dam, and it actually is also used to control the flow into the canal, which is then diverted into a hydroelectric plant not too far away from here. The EDF, Électricité de France, produces an awful large percentage of France's electricity from hydroelectric power. The Miribel Canal, which was founded in 1832, because of the fact that the Rhône River on occasions had actually created a certain amount of flooding, and that's why they decided to build this dam, as they did many other dams down throughout the length of the Rhône, just to control the level and control the flow. The dam itself, the canal itself, was created towards the end of the 1800s. Back with the leaders now, 16 seconds, and that's not much more than about 250 meters. You can see now their speed. They have lifted up the speed in the leading group of 4 riders to about 54 kilometers now. The main field, well, 280 meters is their advantage, while the peloton is hovering at just about the same speed, waiting for the moment to pull it all back together. It's interesting that it's Mark Cavendish's team who have come to the front, and they're already taking the risk. Again, you have to be very, very careful not to lay too much energy out too early on. Sitting over to the right-hand side of Cavendish, you had all the Lotto riders. They will be starting to look after their man, and that, of course, is Andre Greipel. And Andre Greipel, I spoke to his team before the start of this race, and they said, well, we do have our lead-out team well sorted out when it comes down to the running towards the finish. And one of the integral parts of the lead-out for Team Lotto is Greg Henderson. As you get a chance to see what a beautiful region this is region number 01. And every region in France, every department in France, every 101 of them has its own little number. And this one, of course, is the first number on the list, 101. Number 01, sorry.
Well, we're getting into the wetlands of the region now, which makes this a protected area for the fauna and the flora, indeed, of the region. As I say, we've not finished here before. There's the flag showing you the strength of the wind. These poor boys are now down to 19 seconds, and Elminger shakes his head because I think he saw them.
Well, he knows now, Phil, that the writing is very much on the wall there, but we're getting to the fairly critical part of this race. So we're at 23 kilometres to go. In 13 kilometres to go, at 10 kilometres from the finish, that's when really the race, I think, will start to wind itself up, and we'll start to see which of the teams of the sprinters want to take control, because inside of the last 10 kilometres there are only two corners, a 90-degree to the left and a 90-degree to the right, so it really is a perfect sprinter's day today.
And they're coming right up behind them now, 21 seconds and holding. They're going to have led this race for about 163 kilometres, a little bit more than 100 miles ahead of the field today, but it's just about over now. And we're twisting and turning, so the wind is going from head to cross at a fairly regular fashion just at this moment in time.
Well, as you can see, it's swinging around a lot because we're zigzagging now up towards the finishing town of Villars-les-Dombes. And currently, they're actually, because of the way the race is twisting and turning, they're picking up rather nasty headwind, as you can see there from the Portuguese flag over to the left-hand side.
They're just showing off because they beat France in the European Football Championships a week ago. The peloton now are going to start changing the whole attitude to the racing today.
Well, just the information that we were picking up, Phil, from all of the teams of the sprinters at the start, they all realise how important it is to have a solid lead-out train down towards the end. You've got team dimension data over on the right-hand side. They're all looking after Mark Cavendish, but one of the best lead-out squads over the last few years has been Team Lotto, and they will be looking for a five-man lead-out with Marcel Seeberg to lead out early on, Deboucher, Roland, and Greg Henderson, the last man to lead out Greipel.
Almost over for the leaders, Jens Voigt, but the wind is very hard. Can you explain how it is? Because you've ridden the Tour in conditions like this.
Well, we also had the chance this morning to ride the last kilometers of the circuit. So there's a 90-degree turn a little bit after the 6-kilometer mark. And then that leads for 2.5 kilometers into some really strong crosswind. So it is very, very likely that the peloton is going to split up there. So like Christian van der Velde said before, it's going to get a little hairy to get into that corner in a good position in the first place. But in between 3 kilometers to go and 5.5 kilometers to go, that is such a crucial part of today's stage. Basically, the whole stage is going to be decided in this part in the crosswind. So having a good, strong team and a whole lot of riders together with you, it's definitely going to help you. And there I see the advantage for people like Kittel having the strong and experienced team for this behind them.
Wow, well, I'm excited about that, and I must be honest, it looks about 15 kilometres to that little change of direction at the moment, and they're still doing their best not to catch these four riders as they continue to lead. But it'll be that left-hand turn. We're looking at the diagram on our running books at the moment. It's a long, straight road, very acute angle. It's going to be a tough crosswind there.
Well, the complicated thing is, yes, it's just about exactly on 6 kilometres to go to the finish. There's that 90-degree turn to the left. But not only the sprinters will be trying to get well positioned there, Phil, the overall contenders will be trying to stay at the front of the pack. Well, okay, just 10 seconds is the gap of the 4 leaders. I mean, in the main field there, you can almost put your hand out and put it on the back of the 4-man breakaway. I'm a little surprised, though, to see just sitting at the back here, number 164, because he's one of the guys I was talking about as being an integral part of the lead-out for Andre Greipel. That was Jens de Boucher. Maybe he's going to scramble up to the front in a short while and try to get himself in a position for that lead-out, but they can still always count on the big Marcel Seeberger. He's 1.98 m tall. He's the tallest man in the Tour de France, and that, in old money, is 6'6". 21 kilometers, and that's going to take these guys now, when you factor in the weather and the wind conditions, it's going to take them about 25 to 26 minutes to get to the line. You can see the average speeds between the main field and the peloton. They're only separated by around about 150 meters, but they've definitely turned it off in the peloton. Just having a look over to the right hand side, you can see the red jerseys. Left hand side is the white and black jerseys of Dimension Data. Here's one of the little turns, but it's not really critical until they get to that left-hand bend at 6 kilometers to go. And then we will see a massive acceleration in the main field, coming from the sprinters teams, but also coming from BMC and Van Garderen and Port Duo, from Team Sky, looking Movistar, looking after Nairo Quintana, because if they really put the hammer down at that point, we could see a similar situation to the situation that occurred on the road into Montpellier a couple of days ago, where even the leaders get caught out and lose some time.
But now it's eyes down for the sprint kings of the Tour de France. The players are the teammates now setting the pace. There's the right-hand sweeper. Katusha really have confidence now in Alexander Kristoff. They've got 4 riders up there, and Bosenhagen is up there as well for Dimension Data for Cavendish.
Yeah, but not far away. There's the 3 kilometers to go, Bennett. No more corners. It's pretty much a straight run into the finish line now, and Team Katusha are taking control of the peloton over on the right-hand side. But just look behind them, a little bit further back, the black and blue jerseys. They're all communicating Ethics Quickstep. They're waiting to get their lead-out train organised, but waiting till the final few kilometres.
Mark Cavendish is in there as well. Near Bosenhagen, his teammate in a different coloured jersey, is champion of Norway. The black jerseys, they're looking to try and take Brian Cockar on the left of our picture. There's a lot of movement now. Riders are off the road here. Well, they've got back on it, but look at all the places. I wasn't sure whether it was or not.
It was because he's wearing the green jersey and the grey shorts. He's gone to the fashion police this afternoon. Well,
it looks like he's still there to me, Paul.
There you go. I'll agree with you on this one.
Well, thank you.
But it looks so much like him because of the grey shorts, but certainly it's very difficult to catch out Mr. Sagan.
Well, I would have thought he'd put him on the grass, he'd come off ahead of the race. He's that good riding a bike. But the wind is hurting all of the riders here. Just being tailed off the back is Wilco Kelderman. He'll lose time. He was amongst the overall boys for a top 10 finish in Paris. A lot of concern there now. Ethics getting control of the race, though, for Marcel Kittel.
Well, this is one, I would think, probably the best lead-out train. We talked about them a couple of days ago, how well organised they were. Once they get up to about 3 kilometres to go, we'll start to see the real serious line-out, as we're now inside of 1.7 kilometres. It won't be very long now before we start to see coming to the front Tony Martin. There he is in second position, Phil, just waiting for the moment to wind it up. He knows exactly what he wants to do, and once Tony Martin has done his long term, then they'll throw it over to Maximiliano Ricchesi, who in person is a very good sprinter in his own right. And the last man, hopefully, if everything works out well for Ethics Quickstep, will be Fabio Sabatini to do the final lead out. But now Lotto takes control on the left,
and they've washed away Kittel, who's on the last blue rider on the right there, and he's lost a lot of space as they come to 1 kilometre.
Well, that was pretty aggressive as they came up to the line. There was a few changes of direction. I think it was a fairly regular sprint, though, but Marcel Kittel put his hand up to complain about the movement from Mark Cavendish. I think that was just general moving in the main field, but obviously, Phil, as we look at that, these are all the top men. That's Cavendish there, Kittel with his hand up, and Peter Sagan throws for the line. And in the other white jersey, nice. John Degenkolb. Nice to see him back.
How nice was that?
Hey, nice one. Nice one. Again.
Well, just take a look at this here. That's Kittel going for the line. Cavendish breaks over him. Now, when the camera caught Cavendish move, but there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, difficult to say. Obviously, Marcel Kittel not happy with that. Cavendish moves slightly to the middle, then back over to the right-hand side. And he's got 4 fingers up there for 4 victories. But really nice to see getting up there John Degenkolb. Just a quick look there. I think John Degenkolb got up there in 4th or 5th position, and it's nice to see him back. When you know the story behind his performance, being knocked off, almost losing a finger, almost losing his life in a very nasty accident at a training camp in the southern part of Spain in the early part of the year. A chance there to look at the Parc des Oiseaux. It's a beautiful park. As I said, it's almost 400 hectares of bird watching paradise, and 400 hectares corresponds to around about 1,000 acres. And that big tower you can see in the middle is, of course, one of the watch towers to get a good chance to see one or two of the rare species of birds that are down here too. So we've got to wait for a few moments to have another look at the finishing line here. But look, as they come around the corner, Cavendish right in the middle there, looking for the win. It's Degenkolb in the white jersey trying to get there, and it's so great to see him back. Sagan comes right up through the middle, and I'm just, well, third, fourth, second, third and fourth, you'll have to go to the photo. Let's have a look here from the side. Cavendish gets up there. On the far side, Christoph second, third, hazard a guess, while Kittel has to settle for 5th. There was certainly a little bit of movement. I think it was involuntary as we look at this one more time. But you see just going there, slipping backwards. A lot of movement in a sprint like this, and it's all under the control there of Etix at this point. Cavendish moving up into 2nd place. Degenkolb is nicely there in 3rd. Moving into 4th place is Christoph. Cavendish comes up there, and it looked really as if Kittel was trying to get himself back into the slipstream of Cavendish. He almost lost control of the bike. Oh, the lunge for the line. I would think just over on the left-hand side, that was Alexander Christoph, got himself 2nd place, but it was all really very much in the lunge for the line. Hovering around in the middle there as well, finishing inside of the top 10, the Frenchman, Brian Coquart. Well, I wonder what the referees will say about that one. But for Cavendish, yes, number 4, but maybe more importantly, number 30. Well, he seems to think there's Dougie Ryder, who actually came into our commentary position just a little bit earlier on and said, well, this is it. This is what it's all about.
Cavendish was going almost 2-1 of Marcel Kittel as he went by him. The big German sprinter was already done. That was a protest in frustration as much as it was anything else. Alexander Christoph in 2nd position. The photo for 3rd between Peter Sagan and John Degenkolb, and it was Sagan that got 3rd. Degenkolb 4th, Kittel 5th. Greipel, Coquart, Chimolay, Laporte, Semi Dumoulin. A good sprint into 10th. The race journeys into the Jura. There's barely a flat stretch of road to provide provide to tired legs, and while Chris Froome has a commanding lead, there are no guarantees on terrain like this. Hello and welcome to stage 15 of the Tour de France. The only certainty today is that there'll be plenty of action. Starting in Bourg-en-Bresse, making its way through to Toulouse, it's 160 kilometres. There are 6 categorised climbs on the stage, but there's 10 climbs in total. They get a few bonus ones. And it includes the outside categorisation climb at the Grand Colombier. They descend down to the finish line and then back up the Grand Colombier again, but not all the way to the top, before descending through to the finish itself. Welcome to stage 15 of the Tour de France. Matthew Keaton with you, joined by a man who's won 12 stages in the race, 3 green jerseys. Robbie McEwen, we're into the mountains. We're not talking about the green jersey today. Today, it's all about yellow.
It's all about the fight for yellow. It's all about the big GC contenders and the climbers. But don't speak too soon, Matthew, on saying we're not going to talk about the green jersey, because the man wearing it, Peter Sagan, he's full of surprises, and I wouldn't be overly surprised if he pops himself into a break early on in this stage. But it's not realistically a stage he's going to win. But never say never with Peter Sagan.
he may well try and get in the breakaway because there's only 3 mountains to get over before the intermediate sprint, and he's had his margin narrowed. It's now down to just a 62-point advantage over Mark Cavendish, which actually can be wiped away pretty quickly.
One intermediate sprint and one finish could effectively put Cavendish in green, but I don't expect it.
Inside the last 30 seconds before they roll away, 10 minutes neutral, then the flag will come in, and then the racing will really be on. Chance to look down upon this beautiful monastery, the Church of Saint Nicolas. Bourg-en-Bresse hosting a stage start, and it's hosted plenty of finishes of stages in the Tour de France before, often ones that have proved to be decisive. The last 10 seconds. And there is the green jersey, Peter Sagan, alongside Chris Froome, the overall race leader. They roll away. This moment, they all look relatively relaxed, but Nairo Quintana sitting towards the front. Surely the pressure is building internally for Nairo Quintana. Everybody has been expecting the attacks to come from the great Colombian climber, but he's yet to deliver any major punch. He hasn't really landed anything on the chin of Chris Froome.
Not yet, but at this point in the race last year, he also hadn't landed anything on the chin of Chris Froome. It all happened in that last couple of days. We're still a week away from Paris, but now is when it's got to start happening, because Nairo Quintana, he knows last year, he probably started risking it a little bit too late, making those big attacks and finally taking time. Had he started a little bit earlier, he may have been able to crack Chris Froome. But I wonder if his confidence is up to it, because he tried on the Mont Ventoux and he got dropped.
He said he made a mistake and he went too soon. Thomas de Gendt in the King of the Mountains jersey. He must go in the breakaway today. He must.
And he's starting on the front row because he's wearing that jersey. And even if he was second in that competition, I'm sure he'd be starting on the front row, or at least right tucked in behind it, ready to go again. And he knows that if he can get in the break today and Rafael Maker doesn't, he could effectively wrap up the King of the Mountains jersey on today's stage. There are so many climbs on offer. But he says, you know what? I want to have a man-against-man battle with Maker. I'm happy if he tries to go up the road, because I'll go too. I'd like to race for it.
What's happening here with Chris Froome? He's just gone a little bit further forward. Might be trying to get to the left-hand side of the road to adjust some sort of mechanical problem.
He's on the radio. Seems to be having a bit of computer trouble. Might have to dial a geek.
And hopefully he's got that all sorted out. Here's Geraint Thomas towards the front for Team Sky. He will be so valuable today, Geraint Thomas.
It's one of those stages where it's quite possible that Chris Froome will need to use up every single resource he's got. Every teammate, Thomas, and now even early on, Rowe and Stannard, to try and control the attacks, make sure nobody dangerous on general classification slips into a breakaway. But Rowe and Stannard, I think we'll find them pretty quickly dropped on a stage like this. All depends on how aggressive it is right from the start and who gets into the moves and how quickly it calms at the peloton. And here's a smiling face at the front of Mark Cavendish. And lucky he passed maths at school, because almost need a degree to count up as high as he needs to count the stage wins he's amassed in the Tour de France. 30. Okay, making it sound more complicated than it is maybe, but let's just say that's a lot of wins. That's a lot of victory salutes.
Well, he's run out of fingers and toes to count with, so he's had to go in multiples of 10s now. It is extraordinary. 184 starters on the grid today in Bourg-en-Bresse. 185 riders finished yesterday, but Jens de Boucher, the Belgian rider from Lotto Soudal, as we see one of his teammates, Marcus Seberg, come to the front, he crashed heavily with Matty Breschel, who abandoned the race. But Jens made it to the finish, but he hasn't made it to the start today.
No, and he's got a fractured shoulder blade is the diagnosis, and a deep cut on his knee as well. So the Belgian is out of the race, but just a sign of how tough these guys are. Got back on, finished the stage with a fractured shoulder blade, a deep cut right on his knee.
I love this map of France, and the yellow, the Jura, that's where we are right now.
And also down in the corner there, Nice. And of course, here in France, officially 3 days of mourning in the country, and a lot of support going out to the city of Nice and the people of Nice.
And stretching to have a look to see if he can spot it. That was Fabio Sabatini from the edX Quickstep team. Did the lead-out job yesterday for Marcel Kittel, who had to settle for a minor placing, and he was understandably disappointed. More on that in a moment. Who goes first? Luke Rowe, the policeman at the front for Team Sky. The Tour director, Christian Prudhomme, is just about ready to take the flag away and let racing get started. And the race is officially underway. The flag is in and everybody's calm for now. But for how long? Andre Greipel yesterday celebrating his 34th birthday. He moves to the front in the white colours as the German national champion. Not sure that Andre Greipel was overly concerned about the fact that it was his birthday yesterday and he missed out. More concerned about the fact that he just missed out. This is Grommet, who gets the honour of being the first to attack on stage 15. Burkhardt responds quickly. Next in line is Julien Vermont. And then, as expected, the leader of the King of the Mountains classification, Thomas de Gendt, is right in the thick of it. And responding to come across, Peter Sagan.
Expected no less from Peter Sagan. When there's an attack, he's going to just go with it, because that's just what he does. The intermediate sprint today comes after 71.5 kilometres of racing and after category 1, 2 and 3 climbs. So pretty tough ask for any sprinter to get to that intermediate sprint and take points. But if there's one man that can, it's the man in green.
This is the leader of the King of the Mountains classification, winning the stage to Mont Ventoux. Thomas de Gendt, he's going to become the answer to a trivia question. Who won the day that Chris Froome ran? But as you mentioned yesterday, he won't care about that. He just knows that he won, and it was Mont Ventoux.
And that's all that really matters to Thomas de Gendt. And what also matters to him is that polka dot jersey as leader of the King of the Mountains competition. And the best defence is attack, according to Thomas de Gendt. But they're not just letting them go. Long, long line forming at the front. And I'm just wondering where Raphael Maker is at this moment, watching de Gendt ride up the road. If he wants to challenge for that competition, he needs to be with him today.
And given that Alberto Contador is no longer here, he will get the green light to do whatever he wants. And the team owner, Oleg Tinkov, he wants the green jersey, which they've got a strong grip on at the moment, but he also wants the King of the Mountains jersey. Julien Vermont is the rider from edX Quickstep, who has joined Thomas de Gendt at the front. There's not much wind at all today as we're into the Jura. It's fairly calm.
That's Stettiner trying to come across. You said you expected him in the break. He just had a dig going through that roundabout. Still can't quite get himself off the front of that peloton. It was one of the Orica Bike Exchange riders. I think it was Ruben Plaza. Track him or Daryl Impey?
Christopher Juhl Jensen.
You think?
Is my tip.
All right.
The Irish-born Dane, who's been pretty quiet so far, but this is a stage where he can play his role. You're pointing to the screen and you're pointing to Steve Cummings in the white colours. Go on.
Off the front or on the back, one of the two. And as guys start to get dropped, I'm sure he'll just still be in last position of the peloton as others go out. He'll just keep filling that gap, just keep riding around people. As these two riders, they are holding that chasing group at bay at the moment. There's a little group has got itself just off the front of the peloton. We see from the helicopter shot, they've got about 50 metres. That chase group must be about 10 or 12 riders trying to get across to Thomas de Gendt and Julien Vermont.
Which would be the perfect size group for a stage like this. Virtually the same size group that they had on the stage to Mont Ventoux, and very similar to the size of the group that we saw to Andorra when it was Tom Dumoulin that won the stage. So you can't get away with a group of just 2 or 4 or even 5. You need 10 plus, 10 to 15 on a stage like this to stand any chance of surviving. And you need a group that doesn't have any big favourite for a spot inside the top 10. Peter Sagan it is in the green jersey who closes it down. And there has been a big response from the peloton. This is Brice Filou now in the black colours from Fortuneo Vital Concept.
And it looks like Thomas de Gent's move is going to be in vain because everything is coming back together, albeit in a almost fracturing single file line.
Yesterday's stage winner, Mark Cavendish, the debate still rages. Is he going to go all the way to Paris, or is he going to pull the pin with the view of the Olympic Games? His team director, Roger Hammond, has said, we're focusing on trying to get him to Paris because there's 2 more stages that he can win.
I spoke to him last night. Last night I was a guest on a Belgian talk show, an evening Tour de France show called Vive le Vélo, and they interviewed Mark Cavendish on location at his hotel, and I got to ask him a couple of questions as well. And we talked about the possibility of pulling out of the Tour de France. He said, I'm not thinking about pulling out of the Tour de France. I'm thinking about Paris, and I'd love to win there again. And some people say maybe it's a better preparation to pull out and start doing some track training. He said, but I feel good. If I was to get sick, if I was to get overly tired and really struggle, I may consider it. But at the moment, I feel good. I'm going to stay. That's the plan.
This is Greg Henderson at the back of the peloton for Lotto Soudal. Tough day for the Kiwi. Greg Henderson, he's had a tough couple of years with lots of injuries throughout the off-season, which has postponed his preparation for this year. And it looks as if this might be his last Tour de France. There's no confirmation of him going on next year, and there's been that talk of his retirement. Whatever the outcome is at the end of the year, he's had a brilliant career, Greg Henderson. A career that he had to fight for, but he got there. And he's been a stage winner at the Tour of Spain.
Always been an incredibly hard worker, Greg Henderson. Very focused and been an integral part of a lot of riders' wins over the years in the professional teams he's ridden for. He's ridden with Mark Cavendish, but mostly in service of Andre Greipel. Over the last 6 or 7 years, done a great job as the lead-out man for the big German champion.
Sylvain Chavanel now finds himself at the front. Ilnaz Zakarin is the rider who's behind him in the red colours. And Peter Sagan, ever attentive at the front, just taking a look over the shoulder, seeing if there's anybody else prepared to make a move. Katusha have clearly got a plan. They've fallen short with their sprinter. That was yesterday with Alexander Kristoff. Hoping today with Joaquim Rodriguez. Chavanel now decides it's time to go. The first climb itself is only 6 kilometres long, and that tops out when they're at the point of having covered 23 Ks, so with 137 Ks to go. But there's a few lumps before they actually get there. It's quite a steep climb once they're onto it, 8%. This one home for Lotto Soudal. Well, not quite drive it home, but split it open. He's looking to make the most of the little gap that they've got on the main field. And they're still 2 kilometres away from officially starting the first climb of the day.
This is the second hill of the stage, and it was a hill that went up, very short descent, and then kicked up again before a sharp little descent to the foot of the first climb, the Category 1. Tony Galopin running out of time to build much of a buffer before they get onto that Category 1 climb.
Once they get onto that climb, it's 2.3 kilometres until they get to the bottom of the climb. Team Sky would really want things to start to settle down.
So would the sprinters.
All be hoping that a break that is containable gets established. This is the first group that is now losing contact, and Lee Howard in the white colours is amongst them.
Well, Galopin, he is opening up the gap. 2 riders trying to come across. Navadauskas is one of those, an AG2R rider, but behind them there was still more reaction coming from the peloton. So Tony Galopin, the only one so far to get a gap to speak of in this stage, but I'm sure he'd rather be out there with a few riders rather than just on his own.
He has been a stage winner in the past. He's had a brief stint in the yellow jersey. And we've seen a fair bit of his uncle, Alain Galopin, in the team car as one of the sports directors for Trek Segafredo. And today their big hopes rest with Bauke Mollema, who very quickly is becoming the closest challenger, the real rival. Strong on the stage to Mont Ventoux, Bauke Mollema. He bridged across to Froome and Port.
And he was also the fastest to get himself up off the ground, grab his bike and keep moving towards the finish line, bike and all, as opposed to Chris Froome, who was wearing out his cleats, and I'm sure they bolted on a new set for the next day. after that couple of 100 metres on foot. Is Galopin still eking out that gap, and those two riders starting to get a small gap over the peloton.
We're heading towards the Swiss border, and we're in the Jura Mountains at the moment, in the department of the Ain. And this is the beautiful river that runs some 200 kilometres, and it's got its source back in the Burgundy region. Looks absolutely stunning. So too does the road alongside it. Beautiful roads these for cyclo-touring as well, not to race, just to go and enjoy riding. And once we get to the Grand Colombier and then the Lassettes to the Grand Colombier, the last two climbs of today's stage, you're going to see Mother Nature at its very best. The switchbacks on that final climb are breathtaking.
And that's exactly what Lassettes means, all those hairpin turns. Remember, last year the riders tackled the Lassettes de Montvernier, with its 18 hairpins in 3.4 kilometres. Maybe not quite as many hairpins on the Lasset de Colombier, but certainly spectacular in its own right.
A little tough at the back of the peloton.
Tony Martin across on the right-hand side there, number 185 in the blue from Edix Quickstep. Thomas de Gent, well, he has met his match so far, trying to get in the break, but now it's a teammate, Tony Galopin, who is off the front. So de Gent decided to roll the dice right from kilometre zero, try and get a gap before they hit the first big climb. But now down the back, and not in a position now to get himself into the break unless he has a very swift recovery.
He's paying the price for being so aggressive so soon.
Navadauskas also dropping back on the right-hand side in that white jersey of the Lithuanian champion. Tony Galopin fighting to get this gap, but the peloton not prepared to let anybody ride off on their own. Too many riders trying to get themselves in the break, jump across, and just stretching out to the front. I spotted Serge Paul is at the front there from Dimension Data, second on the Mont Ventoux stage.
This is Reinhard Janzi van Rensburg at the back. One of the riders who was supporting Mark Cavendish yesterday. Lars Bak is slipping the wrong direction. De Gent in trouble in the polka dot jersey. Yesterday's birthday boy is there, Andre Greipel. This is where they need to get themselves organised, as the former winner of the race, Vincenzo Nibali, is now coming through to the front. Alberto Lasada is the rider behind him in the red colours from Katusha.
We spoke about it just before. What should Nibali be doing in this race? Should he be staying with Aru? And I said it, Vincenzo Nibali should be able to decide for himself what he thinks is best tactically, and also for he himself. And honestly, back in the bunch, there's not much he can do there for Fabio Aru, particularly in the first 3/4 of the stage. Why not get in the break? And he thinks exactly that.
Vincenzo Nibali, followed by Serge Pauls. It is then Alexei Villimos. Alberto Lasada is next in line from Katusha. They've now officially started the climb. 6 kilometres to the top. Serge Pauls second on the stage to Mont Ventoux behind Thomas de Gent. He's recovered a little bit better than the leader of the King of the Mountains classification. Villimos, a stage winner last year to the Mur de Bretagne. And two riders getting in the thick of it from Katusha. The other one that was up there in the red was Ilnar Zakharin.
And another man in red I saw, I think that was Danny Navarro, third on the stage to Chalet Renard on the Mont Ventoux. He was in the break there with de Gent and Poles. Katusha very present at the front of the peloton. Zakharin in the break, and his teammate right on the front. That is Zakharin on the front of the peloton, in fact. As Villimos drives the pace with Poles and Nibali in his wheel.
Crunch time for this group to get away. FDJ coming across. Surely that is Sebastian Reichenbach, as the reaction is coming from Rafael Majka, who's trying to bridge across.
He has bided his time. He has not been lured out by Thomas de Gent early on the stage. Majka running second in the King of the Mountains competition. And now he said, I'm going to wait till it's the real deal, and then I'm going to go. Majka, he's the man who will make this break work. If he's got any chance, Majka is the one who's got to go to the front and try and split them away from the peloton. That's where he's going to pick up his points. That's where he can win the King of the Mountains today.
A big move, Rafael Micah, as we look at this viaduct that was built in 1872. And it was a strategic point throughout the Second World War, but it was blasted away on the 12th of July 1944, and it took 2 years to rebuild it. It is part of the TGV line, but they've got to slow down to go across it to just somewhere between 80 and 120 kilometres per hour. Tony Martin going out the back, so too Robbie Wagner, the former German national champion. Life is tough at the back. This is Borat Bozic now from Cofidis. Adashiro from the Lamprey team, the German national champion. Meanwhile, at the front, it's the Polish national champion, followed by the climbing Villimos. Very good climber, Alexei Villimos. Formerly a very good mountain bike rider.
A good, handy climber, not a pure climber. We saw his explosive climbing power on the Mur de Bretagne last year, where he jumped away from the peloton and won solo. So Andre Greipel, he's almost at sprint intensity, just trying to make sure he gets into that group. The gruppetto, here's Mark Cavendish. So really starting to form now the usual suspects off the back on the first climb of the day. They'll all get together and just set their pace, make sure they're inside the time limit.
Well, these are the days that stand between Mark Cavendish making it onto the Champs-Elysees and trying to win there again, as he did in 2012.
Lee Howard, Bernard Eisel. So the gruppetto forming really quite quickly. It's over the first couple of weeks in the mountain stages that there's a bit more of a fight. It takes a lot longer for that gruppetto to form. Get into the last week of the tour, it happens a lot quicker. Everybody knows the drill. They know it's getting too hard, get together. And they haven't got much choice. It just happens naturally. It's just physical. It's not what they want. It's just what happens to them.
It is because it is. Rafael Micah.
As is this. We've seen him on the attack in the mountains so many times over the past few seasons in the Tour de France, winning mountain stages, winning the mountains jersey, and that what he has his mind on today, taking it back from Thomas de Gent.
This is Michael Albacini from the Orica Bike Exchange team. He wants to fight to protect the white jersey of Adam Yates.
I still saw a green jersey in that peloton as well. Peter Sagan getting over the first Category 1 climb with the peloton.
Lots of Colombians on the side of the road. They're hoping for some big attacks this afternoon from Nairo Quintana. It needs no conversation, just the nod of their head. That's the international for we're a team for now.
And the pole just making sure the Russian knows what he expects of him over the top of this climb.
This is Steph Clement now, who's come to the front for IM Cycling, followed by Serge Pales. It's then Vincenzo Nibali. This is the second group on the road, and it is an enormous group. George Bennett is down towards the back of that group, I think, from the Lotto NL Jumbo team. Roman Sikar is certainly here from Direct Energy, so too Jerome Capel, Thomas Vockler at the back, and now Vincenzo Nibali. He knows this group is too big, so he's trying to bid Chakos to the 2 leaders.
I was just going to say, when I saw Nibali looking around, he knows he needs to get away because this is too big a group, and he's at least going to have to split it on the descent to try and go across to these two. But he's not even waiting for that.
And if anybody can split it on the descent, it is Vincenzo Nibali. 10 points in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey for Rafael Micah. He's still in second position, but he's now just 3 behind Thomas de Gent. Vincenzo Nibali. Serge Pales he knows exactly whose wheel he wants to follow.
And Pales going out to pick up a few points for the King of the Mountain as well. So he wants to finish high up in that competition. And he's not totally off the pace either.
He's in 6th position at the start of the day and 50 points behind. Vincenzo's not worried about King of the Mountains points. He goes again.
And he is attacking that downhill.
The green jersey, Peter Sagan, is also trying to go away.
And another specialist of, well, apart from everything, downhills in particular. And Sagan, he will leave this peloton because they won't take risks with Chris Froome, Team Sky. They will be controlled in the downhill. Peter Sagan, he will rail every corner. Remember last year's descent into Gap, where he was chasing down Ruben Plaza, who ended up winning the stage. That's the sort of thing that Peter Sagan will be putting out on the road to get himself across to the break. And think about taking some more points after 71 kilometres at the intermediate sprint. As we look at the Mont Blanc.
Off in the distance, stage 19 goes to the base of Mont Blanc. An indication that there is lots of climbing still to come, and everybody in the race is delighted that there's no road to the top of that enormous mountain.
Yeah, a little bit high at about 4,800 metres above sea level. Just over halfway up Everest.
Rafael Majka and Ilnaz Zakarin at the front. Well, that's one done. 5 more significant climbs to go. For the sprinters, you've said this before, sometimes it's not one day at a time, sometimes it's just one climb at a time.
And don't look up. Looking at this descent, it looks a bit too open and flowing for the likes of Vincenzo Nibali. He needs it more technical so he can really take risks in the corners to get away from the rest of the group. You see the corners are really quite open, a pedalling descent, so he's going to have to do it on brute strength. A couple of corners maybe lower down that he can just open that gap, but all the rest of this group, they know exactly what he's trying to do. They're also putting the risks out to stay with a guy like Nibali.
He's got Julian Alaphilippe behind him from the NX Quick-Step team, who's had a significant impact on the race for a first-timer. A long stint in the white jersey.
He had a significant impact in the time trial for anybody who went and looked at that photo online when he came off and was flying through the air. Quite an incredible photo. When you see the photo, you would not believe that he'd still be in the race.
Meters per hour for the chasers.
And it's not even that steep on the downhill.
We saw, I can't remember what stage it was, Lee Howard posted his SRM machine to show his maximum speed for the day of 122 kilometres per hour.
Frightening.
You can't afford to make any mistakes at those sorts of speeds.
It'll be the last mistake you ever made.
Sadly, that would be true. Across the top of the climb. This lake, Natura, which is 2.7 kilometres long, 650 metres wide. Another beautiful lake in this region, and there's plenty of them throughout today's stage. Rafael Majka and Ilnaz Zakarin have now been caught by the Vincenzo Nibali group. So that big difference in speed has been enough for Vincenzo to return to the front. No great concerns at this point, at least, for the Sky Squad. Pierre Rolland, he sits in 18th position overall at 15 minutes and 6 seconds down. Part of the breakaway group. This is Haimar Zubeldia at the rear of the breakaway. 26th overall at 32 minutes behind. Of the Izagirre brothers that have managed to make the move, it's Jon Izagirre that is in the break for Movistar. Danny Navarro, third on the stage to Mont Ventoux. George Bennett in the break. Julian Alaphilippe stretching everything, doing yoga on the bike. Ruben Platzer is the rider that's just in front of Alaphilippe, and he will not contribute to the pacemaking in this group, Ruben Platzer. He'll spend the whole day sitting on. He is waiting to be in a position to support Adam Yates.
And that's just what this man at the back will be doing as well. Haimar Zubeldia, the Spaniard from Team Trek Segafredo. He'll be thinking about Bauke Mollema and what he can do for him. So it's not about Zubeldia, it's about the team, it's about their GC hope. And he's sitting second overall at the moment, Mollema, after a fantastic career best time trial in the Ardèche a couple of days ago.
And he said that he spent a lot of time on his time trial bike this year. Dan Martin, in contrast, said that, well, he lost a bit of time in the time trial. He expected to, and he hasn't ridden his time trial bike at all, really, this year. Dan Martin was 33rd on the stage. Bauke Mollema was 6th. And Dan Martin lost a big chunk of time, and he really paid the price for not focusing on the individual time trial. But he said all his attention has been on the mountains. Let's see if that works out for him.
Talking of the mountains and the mountains competition, that's going to be a big focus of this stage until the GC riders really start to battle it out and hopefully for us attack each other. That classification, De Gent was leading with 13 points advantage. That's now down to just 3 points over Rafael Majka. But also in the break today, Navarro, Dumoulin and Serge Pauls. And Pauls was 50 points behind the lead, so he was 37 behind Majka. He's now given a few more away. But all those riders can think about possibly winning that competition because it's not finished today. There's another few Alpine stages to come yet.
It's a long way from being finished. 59 points up for grabs today if you collect all of them. And Rafael Maica is the only one that can do so, having won the first of the climbs. The team cars now going forward. The peloton strung out in not quite single file. The cars will be heavy on the horns to let the riders know that they're making their way past. Safety is the absolute priority. The helicopters down in the field, the VIP helicopters that get to go and follow the race. The best way you could possibly hope to do so. The only better way to follow the race than being in one of those helicopters is on the back of a motorbike. And then you're really in amongst it. There's a few of the journalists that cover the race, former riders, that get to go on the back of a motorbike and they commentate from actually out on the course, which you do each year at the Cadel Evans Great Ocean Road Race. As a former rider, to be on the motorbike watching it all unfold, you feel like getting in amongst it.
It's a lot of fun. I don't feel like getting in amongst it, because one thing I really don't like to see is motorbikes too amongst it. It doesn't give me the feeling that I want to be there on the bike and racing them, but it is really good to see it up close like that. But I honestly would like to see less motorbikes in and around the peloton. We saw it the other day on the Mont Ventoux. That one motorbike that Richie Porte hit, well, he wasn't the only part of the problem. It was the three motorbikes in front of him. Too many. And they really need to narrow that down. But quite a convoy that was moving past the peloton, because 30 riders in the breakaway. And the only team I've identified that so far, I'll do a little bit more searching, but the only team not in it are Team Sky, all rallying around Chris Froome. As for the rest, I think every other team has someone in the break.
BMC. They're missing. Their strategy today. Their strategy today, your thoughts?
Well, I saw early on a couple of BMC riders trying to get amongst the break, but of course unable to on that Category 1 climb. If they didn't have anybody capable of getting in the break, that doesn't say a lot about the depth of the team in strength at the moment. Of course, they would have been saving their very best guys. Porte, Van Garderen, they're obviously not going to go. And maybe their best lieutenants also not. But the rest of the team was struggling, few off the back, and the rest unable to get in the break.
As they're making their way along the Valley Road, heading towards the next climb, which is the Col de Sapel. It's a Category 2 climb. Let's do what we usually do around about this time of the broadcast and go inside the peloton. The sprint finish yesterday, when we saw the helicopter shot, there was lots of rubbing of shoulders. We saw Peter Sagan and Brian Cockar rub shoulders. Dan McClay was heavily up against the barriers at one point. It was a frenetic sprint. I'm not sure the onboard cameras really have managed to do it justice. Almost at the top of the climb. Just 400 metres to go. Thomas Voeckler stretching the legs. It's then Steve Morabito, but the man with the most to gain is from Tinkoff, and that's Rafael Maica. Just behind him is Serge Pales, who's already shown his interest in the King of the Mountains jersey. The Direct Energy fan club on the side of the road for Thomas Voeckler. They'll be happy to see him in the breakaway. We need to get the camera to return to the front to see what's happening in the race for points. Surely it will be Rafael Maica who collects some more. This is Pierre Rolland, who the French are focusing on. Tom Dumoulin at the back of the group in the white colours from Giant Alpecin, just making sure he doesn't waste any energy. These riders will be able to return on the descent as the pace heats up in the battle for the King of the Mountains points. It's a Category 2 climb, so this climb across the top, 5 points for the winner. And Rafael Maica just having a little bit of a slip of the gears. It's Thomas Voeckler who collects maximum points. 3 points then for Rafael Maica, so he's now equal first place with Thomas de Gent. 90 points apiece in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. This is Jon Ezequiel from Movistar. The Col de Sapel, they've managed to get across it.
You have to ask, is this just a show of strength by Thomas Voeckler, or does he really think he can win the King of the Mountain jersey if he starts now with a 90-point deficit?
for the King of the Mountains jersey. There was a big Direct Energy fan club on the side of the road.
And there was a camera.
This is Dylan Groenewegen at the back, the Dutch national champion. 11th on yesterday's stage. In his first Tour de France, he said he's just getting tired. It was as simple as that. He didn't make mistakes, he's just tired.
Just getting tired.
You're allowed
Normal.
to. Luke Rowe at the front. He's crashed a few days ago with Simon Gerrans.
Matt, we've had a retirement for the race just recently, and Jesus Herrada from the Movistar team, the Spaniard, he has abandoned the Tour de France, and his sport director from Movistar, Jose Luis Arrieta, he explained that Herrada retired because he had fever overnight. He managed to eat a little bit this morning, wasn't feeling good. Then he couldn't keep his food down and he wasn't able to continue the race. So it's part and parcel of the Tour de France. Sometimes your body just packs it in and doesn't let you do any more than you're trying to push it to do. And that's happening with Mark Cavendish's legs at the moment. Although he does say in general, I'm feeling good and I'm going to stay in the Tour till Paris. But a sprinter's legs, they'll argue on mountain stages.
Well, he's got 4 stage wins, and there's no arguing with Mark Cavendish being the fastest sprinter in this year's Tour de France and the fastest in history. He has won 30 stages now of the Tour. Just momentarily on Jesus Herrada from the Movistar team. That's a big loss to Nairo Quintana. He was a stage winner in an uphill finish at the Criterium de Dauphiné. So for Sky and Chris Froome, it's good news. Not that they want to hear it, but at least for them, well, that's one less rider from Movistar for Nairo Quintana to have support from.
Well, that's part of the battle of the Tour de France, staying healthy, being strong enough that your immune system is up to the task of the Tour de France. And that's what it comes down to. Sometimes you get a fever because you're struggling so badly with the effort and the recovery of the Tour de France.
And I think that was the case with Alberto Contador. The fever came on because of the injury and the extra fatigue that came with it. Daniel Teclahamanot, the Eritrean national champion, Cummings with him. Peter Sagan, the leader in the race for the green jersey, aiming for 5 in a row. Extraordinary record. The record at the moment for green jerseys is Eric Zabel. He's got 6 wins in the battle for green.
When I spoke to Mark Cavendish last night on that bell, I asked him a question. I said, Cav, would you like to see, or do you think it would be fair if the green jersey competition was restructured a little bit, that the points across the competition were a little bit different, so it opens it up to the guy who's the best sprinter, because you are the best sprinter in this Tour? He said, no. Then it would just be an anti-Sagan jersey. He said, well, okay. In the end, he said, maybe a separate prize or a recognition. I said, I'm going to create my own best sprinter category of the Tour de France, and I'm going to award that myself. And I've already done it because Mark Cavendish will not be overhauled as best sprinter in this Tour. Just have to come up with some sort of trophy, or might make him a certificate. But he said, no, that's the way the green jersey competition is. He said, but I do think it's a bit over the top with so many points on offer at the intermediate sprints. He said, take those out and I'd be well in front.
And that's where Peter Sagan is really making his ground up, particularly on medium mountain stages. 3 riders in this leading group of 28 from IM Cycling. Every time we've seen this squad, yesterday they had Martin Alminger in the breakaway. We've spoken about the fact that since the sponsor said, unfortunately, the end of the season, it's all over, the team has stepped up to a whole new level. They've got 3 riders in the break, Steph Clement, Jerome Capel and Jalison Pantano. And Pantano, the Colombian, is a brilliant climber, and he was a stage winner at the Tour de Suisse this year, finishing in 4th position overall. He's a real threat from that leading group. For Dimension Data, they've won 5 stages so far. We're on stage 15. That's a third of the stage victories that go into Dimension Data. And he is sprinting here to collect some points in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. Not a lot of points on offer on this one. This is only a Category 3 climb, so just 2 points for the win. And smartly, Rafael Micah is choosing the economical approach. He's not wasting a sprint on one of the minor climbs. He'll be saving it for the big one, the Grand Colombier, which is outside categorization. And if he gets over the top of that one in first position, it'll be 20 points.
But Baker just nipping out of that chasing bunch in the background there to come over and pick up the 1 point. So he's only handed 1 point back to Serge Paul, so he's got a big lead on anyway, but doing the minimum required to get himself a point rather than go head-to-head in a sprint, possibly lose it and waste all that energy.
Over the top of the Col de Piers Loop, and it was Serge Pauls collecting 2 points. 1 point to Rafael Micah, which now puts him in the lead in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey by that 1 point, ahead of Thomas de Gent, who's stranded back in the main peloton. Ethiopia's Gourmet riding for the Lamprey team, sitting down at the back of this breakaway. Good to see him in the move, just 24 years of age. He knows what's required to get through a 3-week race. Last year, he finished 2 Grand Tours, Italy and Spain. So there's no question mark over his endurance. Giving a little bit of distance on the descent, though. Not taking the corners quite as quickly as some of the others. The finish today is in the town of Toulouse. They go over the Grand Colombier as the second last climb, and then the Lassettes to the Grand Colombier as the final climb, and it's down through to the finish line. In between those 2 climbs, they go across the finish line for the first time. We spoke before about how rare it is to have a circuit finish in the Tour de France. It happened a lot throughout the 70s and the 60s, but with the exception of the Champs-Élysées, the last time it has happened was back in 1998 in Dublin.
And I was there, I should have remembered. It was in Phoenix Park in Dublin.
And Cipollini was the winner.
No.
No?
Tom Steels.
Tom Steels
Eric
was the winner.
Zabel second. And then I was the next one.
Cipollini crashed on the way into the circuit.
I think he may have crashed on the backside of the circuit after we already got the bell. He had a couple of crashes that year, Chippo. But Tom Steels, he dominated that Tour de France in the sprints. He won 4 stages.
Just as we've seen this year for Mark Cavendish. Serge Pauls and Rafael Micah, as they went across the top of the previous climb, they have given it a little squirt. 3rd participation for Rafael Micah in the Tour de France. Best result last year, 28th overall. But more importantly, he's won 3 stages and he's won the King of the Mountains classification. He's been the winner of the Tour of Poland, which is running at the moment. Tim Wellens is leader, incidentally, of that race. But he was 3rd in the Volta a España last year, Rafael Micah, and 5th in the Giro d'Italia this year. The guy is among the best climbers in the world, and he's in a good position to pick up yet another stage victory for Tinkoff.
Well, I think more than the stage victory, he has his mind on the King of the Mountains jersey. He made it his own a couple of years ago when he won also a couple of stages. And pushing on with this attack with Serge Pauls. And I found it quite a strange time for 2 of the best climbers in the group to go on the attack on a 10-kilometre slightly downhill valley, when you think it would be much easier to open their advantage on a climb.
They've gone for the element of surprise.
Taking a leaf out of the Chris Froome book.
Hasn't he been surprising? He has been. He's been fabulous. 1 kilometre to the intermediate sprint. This is Tom Dumoulin, along with the 2 riders from Movistar, which is Izagirre and Oliveira. And the pace is really starting to pick up within that group. The Chateau de Ongueville, which is just off in the distance. We might get a chance to look at that once they get through the intermediate sprint. 500 metres, there'll be no great contest amongst these 2, I wouldn't imagine. 20 points in the race for the green jersey. A 3-second time bonus, but that's insignificant. Rafael Micah, he looks to be very sociable. We saw him talking earlier with Ilnaz Akharin, now having the conversation with Serge Pauls, negotiating what happens through this intermediate sprint.
And I think it would have been something to the effect of, you take the sprint.
I want the King of the Mountains. And that's exactly what is happening. But Serge Pauls also wants the King of the Mountains points, so no great agreement. Reichenbach Or is that Morabito trying to go across? I Am Cycling looking to close it down. So the move not creating a big gap, but it is increasing the pace from that group.
Well, I've seen them take 30 seconds in comparison to the peloton, who are also now strung out single file. This will be where Stannard and Rowe pick the pace up a little bit, try and, if they can, narrow that gap down. And normally, I think they would have narrowed the gap down somewhat, except for the attack of Maker and Poles, which really inspired that group to really get working together, which they haven't done for quite a while. There's a bit of ingenious farm art there, milking the cow and making the cheese.
And they make lots of cheese in this region. One of the key producers that they make in this part of the Jura. Ian Stannard still at the front with Luke Rowe. The longer they stay at the front, the better it is for Chris Froome.
Did you see the little hand signals from Stannard and Rowe? They came towards that corner. They get there, they can see what the corner's doing. They give a hand signal as if to say, tight left, a caution sign, if you like, to let Chris Froome know what it's like, what to watch out for, that there's a gutter on the side. So they're really thinking about every little detail there.
Like a co-pilot in a rally car. Left 4. And it is starting to string out at the back of the peloton. Things are getting a little tougher now. And you see with all the directional signals that you've got, and there's one on the right-hand side saying straight ahead. You spoke about this a couple of days ago. If it's a gentle turn, it's just 1 arrow. Sharp turn, there's 2. And when it's really sharp, there's whistles, there's gendarmes, and there's all sorts of alarm bells going off.
That's right, but it always helps to have your teammate on the ball, like Stannard and Rowe at the front, just pointing out little things, even pointing out so much as a dip in the road or a little pothole if there is one, which normally they drive the whole course. The organisation, they send out a couple of vans the day before the stage and also on the morning of the stage. They go over the whole course slowly and they check the road. And if there's any potholes, they fill them. They try and repair everything, so they leave nothing to chance and keep the riders as safe as possible and from having unforeseen mechanicals that could affect their race.
2 riders from Katusha, Lusada and Zakharin.
And after what we saw happen to Zakharin in the Giro d'Italia with his descending, his, let's call it, lack of skill in going downhill, wasn't able to keep it on the road. I'm sure he and his team directors would like to see him build up a substantial gap by the top of the climb so he doesn't have to risk everything on the way down.
Steve Morabito at the front for FDJ. Speaking of crashes, our thoughts are with Edward Turns, who's just come out of surgery, according to his team, Trek Segafredo, and everything went well. So heal fast. Good luck, Edward Turns. We're looking forward to you coming back to the Tour de France next year, because he's ridden well in his first attempt at it in 2016. He got the white jersey on the first stage.
A very good debut, a couple of top five finishes in the bunch sprints. So hopefully we see Edward Turns back quickly and back in the bunch sprints where he belongs.
Gorgeous sunny Sunday afternoon in the Jura. A family picnic on the side of the road as they watch the Tour de France work its way past. And now Serge Pauls, almost at the top of the climb, stretches the legs, and Rafael Majka is shaking his head. He wants to maintain some consistent working within this group, but Serge Pauls has got every right to try and pick up the points. But again, it's only a Category 3 climb, so there's just the 2 points up for grabs if he goes over the top in first position, which clearly he's going to do. Rafael Majka is waiting for the big one, which is still to come, and that's the next climb of the Grand Colombier. 2 points for Serge Pauls, but the big climb of the day is about to come, and across the top of that one, there'll be 20 points up for grabs. So Serge Pauls, he now moves up to around about 55 points in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey. And Rafael Majka is on 92. Some big ground to make up.
So he's attacking for the top of those climbs, but not really making a dent in the lead that Rafael Majka now has over him. And did Majka just ride to the front of that breakaway group to mop up the last point, or did he not bother?
Well, he would have been able to do so without spending any energy, so I imagine that he probably did.
This is La Forêt de Mazières that the peloton or the breakaway are riding through. There's the peloton riding through it now on the way to the top of the climb. A beautiful forest in the Jura.
And it's still Ian Stannard at the front. So Team Sky is showing no real concern for the breakaway. A reminder that the best place rider in that breakaway group is Sebastian Reichenbach at 11 minutes and 41 seconds down. The good news for Sebastian is he's now in the top 10 overall. Virtual top 10. Still a long way to go. Just inside 80 kilometres.
Of course, people of the Ain region must excuse me. We're not in the Jura. We're in the region L'Ain, just to the south of Jura. Beautiful region nonetheless.
He won the prologue of the event. Now he's absolutely on a high in this year's Tour de France. Yes, he's lost too much time to challenge for the podium, we think, in Paris. But now let's have a spin around. Maybe we can see. I think Vincenzo Nibali, and there he is. He's trying to cross the gap. Put those two together, Paul, and I'll agree with everybody. We're never going to be seen again today.
Well, if those two get together at the head of affairs this afternoon, it's job done. Still caught in the middle, Phil. Sadly for him, in no man's land is Dylan van Baarle of Team Cannondale Drapac, but there is Nibali, and he looks very comfortable. His goal at the Tour de France this year, he said he made no bones about it before the start of the Tour. I'm out here searching for stage victories. Now, if he wants one this afternoon, I mean, I just highlighted two names of the riders in that leading group, Nibali and Tom Dumoulin. If they make the junction at the front, they'll be very, very difficult, these two guys, to catch.
Overall, Tom Dumoulin is nearly an hour behind, so he's not looking to win the Tour, he's looking to win the stage. As they break away here, still 28 strong, 27 strong. They haven't caught Van Baarle just yet, but some serious contenders have left them behind on this climb now. As Nibali's gone straight past Dylan Van Baarle.
There in the distance, you can just see the white jersey going into the shade of Tom Dumoulin. And of course, having won the Giro d'Italia this year, Vincenzo Nibali will know just how good Tom Dumoulin has become over the last number of years, which is why he's probably the only rider in that group of 30 riders that Vincenzo Nibali wanted to be with. And now that's why he's trying so hard on this climb. And by the way, we're not actually yet on the categorized climb of the day, because that comes in about 10 kilometers time. That's when we start the Grand Colombier, and I think Vincenzo Nibali, he wants to make the junction, Phil, before we get to that point.
Yeah, this is why they've talked about this being such a hard stage. Even there are a number of roads here which don't have categories for the King of the Mountains, yet they're well worthy of second category climbs.
Well, that obviously says Auton, which is the region we're in right now, and they are putting a love sign up there for Nice, because let's not forget we're still in 3 days of mourning in France for the tragedy that happened in Nice a couple of nights ago on the 14th of July. And in fact, Phil, a number of the French riders are still wearing black bands around their shoulder, around their sleeves at the start of the stage.
7:20, about the biggest we've had. Back to the main pack. And now if Nibali, he's got his tempo going. This is not an official climb at all. We are just about 7.5 kilometers from the official start of the giant Col de la Combière, which is a 12.8 kilometer climb.
Well, I
oh,
think
there we are.
officially,
What did it say? 8.2. Is that what I said?
No, I think you're pretty close to that, Phil. That's about 5 miles of racing. Vincenzo Nibali has seen this as the moment to try and get across, but look at the reaction coming behind, because they're not giving free tickets out this afternoon, and they're all trying to nail back Vincenzo Nibali, but he is looking after the man in front, Dumoulin. And then once they go over the top of this unmarked climb, shall we call it, uncategorized climb in Auton, then they will have a rapid little descent of 4 or 5 kilometers, around about 3 miles downhill into the valley, and then that's when they'll start the big climb of the day in earnest. And they're still holding on to a gap of around about 7 minutes over the main field. And again, in that main field, we'll start to see a general warming up, a general speeding up, as the main contenders want to place themselves at the front end of the main field for this big final climb. Well, it's not the final climb, the final climb of the day that we'll do on 2 occasions. Right, coming across there now. The leader of the race is Tom Dumoulin. He got into that break. He was the only rider from his team to get into that leading group, by the way, and he was very much in a solitary situation. Vincenzo Nibali, on the other hand, he had a teammate in there, Kangert. So now as we start to see coming across, the next rider to come across is one of the riders from IM Cycling. A little bit further back, there's also just trying to get onto the back there, one of the riders from AG Tuara's seen this as a really good move to try and get himself into contention. But now we're over the top of this uncategorized climb now with Tom Dumoulin. Good chance to see that, and having a quick look down there, he's in the largest gear that he can get himself into. And now Nibali has been joined in the second position on the road by a couple of other riders. As we look a little bit further down the road there, you get a chance now to see that is the main field, still under control, under the pilotage of Team Sky. Froome sitting right at the back of that long line of riders there, his teammates all the way up alongside him. But they'll know. Well, Dumoulin has got 20 seconds advantage over the group of Vincenzo Nibali.
Sad exit for him from that race last year when he had a pretty bad crash. Not 3 days into the race, but they're now leading the charge here now. Pantano at the front edge, his first tour as well.
They're actually closing in on him, because the last time check I got over race radio was it was down to 18 seconds for the three chasers. So if they do make the junction, we will then have a very solid leading group of 4 riders.
Just over 2 kilometers to the official start of the Grand Colombier, and they've got him in the distance now. They're closing in on him. They're going to hit him just as the climb starts.
Well, in fact, I'm not sure that they're closing in on him. I think he's, in fact, waiting for them to make the junction. I think he sees this as a good opportunity, because, after all, there's still a good 62 kilometers to go to the finish. And that's why I think he's sat up and waited. He realizes he needs some assistance over this next climb of the day. Look at Vincenzo Nibali just looking over his shoulder. He's calling Pantano to come forward. And Pantano, by the way, rode an excellent Tour of Switzerland. He finished in 4th place overall and won himself a stage. That was the big stage race. 2 stage races really used as preparation for the Tour de France, the Criterium de Dauphiné, which most of the big contenders used, and the Tour of Switzerland. And Pantano, the rider in the middle there, a 27-year-old Colombian, is an excellent climber, and it looks like a pretty good descender there as he goes up through the inside. He also, back in 2010, finished at 3rd overall in the Tour de l'Avenir, which is, although a race for the developing riders, it is always an indicator that if you can win that race or finish on the podium, it gives you an indication of the ability to ride well in the Tour de France. So Dumoulin just sitting on the back there, just recovering a fraction. He's had a great race so far. Very, very dominant in the individual time trial a couple of days ago, and in fact in the middle section of that individual time trial he rode at approximately 57 kilometers an hour average speed. Yes, I know that was because he had a cross tailwind, which was very helpful, but you try riding at in excess of 30 miles an hour for about 20 miles, and that is what Tom Dumoulin was able to do. He now makes himself the #1 favorite to win the gold medal in the individual time trial in Rio de Janeiro, just about 2 weeks after the end of the Tour de France. His other challenge, though, will come from the man who currently leads this race overall, Chris Froome, who got a medal in the individual time trial in London. He finished in 3rd position to get himself a bronze, and he said that was probably one of the proudest moments of his career, to climb up there in 3rd position behind Bradley Wiggins, who that year won the Tour de France and the Olympic gold medal in the individual time trial. So just waiting to get a bit of confirmation. They've got 14 seconds advantage over the chasers, which is not very much. There's the left-hand bend, and there is the start of the climb at 12.8 kilometers. And the information on this climb is it's 12 0.8 kilometers long. That's about 8 miles. It's an average gradient of just inside of 7%, and this is the remnants of the breakaway group of 30 riders, and they're not too far behind there. 12 kilometers to the top for them. I think everybody in the group behind is expecting attacks to come from Team Movistar, but for the moment, advantage goes to Team Sky. They've had the majority of their riders in that group, although Luke Rowe and the other big strong man from that group, Ian Stannard, they had a little bit of a difficult time on the first climb of the day, which was attacked very aggressively. They recovered over the top, and since then they've done the job that they've done so many times over the first couple of weeks of this Tour de France. They've set the tempo. They realize, though, that by the time they get to the 60 kilometer to go point, that's when their job is pretty much done, because that's when we'll start to turn up towards the high spot of today's stage, 1500 meters, but more importantly, it is a drastically hard climb, and on the other side it's a very tricky descent, and the riders will go through the finishing town of Coulouse, and then they'll go out again for a 23 kilometer loop with another ascent from a different side of the Grand Colombier up to the Lacet du Grand Colombier. And if we get the shots that we've had in the past of that climb, and it is a beautiful clear blue sky today. In fact, every time we pull back, we can see the Alps in the background beckoning the Tour de France, and we've seen great images of Mont Blanc. So Nibali there, as you can see, is really starting to wind it up there. He's looking for a little bit of a gap if he can, but I think the better part of valor here really would be to stay together. We've got 4 solid climbers who will collaborate on the early slopes of this climber. Pantano had a great Tour of Switzerland with a stage victory. Tom Dumoulin, well, he really is showing, Phil, that he's a lot more than an individual time trialist. And Vincenzo Nibali, well, as the French would say, he's got fourmis dans les jambes. He's got ants in his legs. He is itching to get himself into an attacking position.
Tour de France.
Yeah, but we really are reducing the leading group of 30 quite dramatically, and Rafael Majka again has seen this as a big opportunity. And after all, Phil, this is an outside categorized climber. There are 25 points for the first man to go over the top on a day like this, and he's not only thinking now about points in the King of the Mountains competition, I think he's actually starting to dream about the possibility of a stage win.
Well, I'm hearing all the sprinters are being dispatched out of the main field. Tom Dumoulin in this breakaway made a determined move. He's still joined by Nibali, but the wrong way now. They're going away from the lead group together.
Well, I mean,
this is Jaime Zubeldia, one of the third oldest man in the race too. Vastly experienced. He's losing ground, 69.
Well, I have to say, Phil, that is a bit of a shocker to me. They made the right move. Tactically, they knew when they needed to make the move, but they've just not been able to follow up. It's still 8.5 minutes, and it's still all of this pacemaking being done by Sky. It looked very much there as we took a quick glimpse back to the main field, as if Luke Rowe and Ian Stannard were starting to disappear. And that's not really a surprise. They've done an awful lot of work over the undulating part of the course, but now we're getting into some serious mountain climbing. Just John Degenkolb going back there, Phil. I think everybody very happy with the ride in the sprint yesterday by Degenkolb, coming back from an awful injury at the start of the year. Vincenzo Nibali now on the defensive. He's at 40 seconds from the leading group, which has come down to around about 7 riders. Again, one of the riders who's got his mind fixed on the month of August. He's, let's not forget, already the winner of the Giro d'Italia this year with an amazing comeback in the last 4 or 5 days in the mountains. He came back from 4 minutes overall to eventually win the race, and came into this race and said, look, I've come here as a big helper for Fabio Aru, but today he looked to get himself into the breakaway. Well, another rider slipping away here. This is Jon Izagirre. Izagirre had also an excellent Tour of Spain, and he and his brother were both in the Tour of Spain, which happened just a couple of weeks before the Tour de France. He finished in 2nd place overall, Jon, and also won himself at the individual time trial. Pierre Roland. Well, he must have been thinking Christmas had come early when he got into a breakaway like this, but now we're starting to get into the tough climb. He's really pretty much on the defensive. So let's have a quick look, see if we can identify the riders. It was 7. It looks as if it might be 8 or 9 riders now. This is Serge Pauwels on the front. Pauwels has made the junction. Reichenbach is in there as well.
The second group on the road here, Bennett is in the These are all dropped riders now, going backwards from this breakaway, including it's Albacini, this rider here, 202. This is even further back from the peloton.
Yeah, these are the riders from the yellow jersey group now who are being eliminated on the early kilometres of this penultimate climb of the day, the outside categorised Grand Colombier. We've seen a lot of the big sprinters eliminated from the yellow jersey group because this is a tough climber, Phil. Almost 13 kilometres, 8 miles of ascension. And to make matters worse, they've got to do almost the same climb once again before they get to the finishing line for the final time.
That's right. There are actually 4 roads over this mountain, 4 different directions. As we go back to the first climb of the mountain at the moment, and Pozzovivo is feeling on a good day here. He went early, he got caught, he's gone again, while the riders he broke clear with have been dropped. So Pozzovivo in his first Tour de France, he is a good climber. Now trying to get this group workmanlike. Majka in second place just now, the champion of Poland, working well.
Well, just looking at the rider on the front there, Phil, Sebastian Reichenbach, if he gets to the finish with his advantage right now over the main field, he'll be creeping up into the top 5 in the overall standings. All of the red line you can see there on the road ID profile has been done and dusted. We are now very much on this penultimate climb, the Grand Colombier. Almost 13 kilometres, 8 miles of climbing, goes from 2,000 feet and peaks out to just inside of about 4,500 feet up at the top.
Our helicopter showing you the top here. Looks like we have a nice walking trail or even a mountain bike trail on the top of this col. We won't be going quite that high today. As I was saying, there are 4 roads up. We're using 2 of them today. As we swing, we will see the finish before the riders go back out for a 23.5 kilometre return to the same climb but a different road. 8 minutes 40, the spread of the men who matter.
This is the second group of chasers now on the road. They're chasing the 2 leaders, Majka and Zakharin. And this is a pretty strong group too. It's a 10-man group, but still Sebastian Reichenbach is in that group. He's looking to move up well in the overall standings today. Another Frenchman in the group, Alexis Villermoz. Danny Navarro is in there, Yalens and Pantano in the chasing group just behind these riders, and the distance between them is not much more than about 25 seconds as we start to see a little bit of organisation coming. The other rider in that group as well, just sitting not too far away from the front in the Movistar jersey, is Nelson Oliveira, who rode a brilliant individual time trial a couple of days ago, giving us the indication that he is in good form. But the man who could be quite dangerous if this all came back together towards the end is Julien Alaphilippe. Despite a very nasty crash in the individual time trial, he's a great descender because he's a rider who comes into this top end of the sport from a cyclocross background.
Down amongst the forest here, this is the peloton. Chris Froome with the yellow jersey, just trying to pick out the white jersey of Adam Yates. He is down there. I think he has only 1 teammate left with him on the Orica Bike Exchange squad, but he seems well capable of handling himself. Bauke Mollema also there, looking very, very good indeed. The peloton coming to 5 kilometres from the summit. The leaders are at 2.2 kilometres from the summit.
And again, when you look into the face of Vasil Kirienka, he's just concentrated on keeping the pressure on. He will ride like this for as long as he can. You can see all of those riders, once they open the shirts a fraction, you can see a band around their middle. That in fact is a band that will give them an indication of their wattage, their RPM, their revolutions per minute, their cadence, and the speed that they're doing on the road at the moment, as well as a quick look into their heart rate. And I'm sure many of them right now, Phil, would not like to have access to their heart rates because they're probably all working at about 180 to 190 beats a minute. He's at 5:16, but a 1 minute gain over 1 or 2 of the other rivals in this race, with moving up into 6th or 7th position. Struggling now to stay in contact with the second group on the road. Number 19, Nelson Oliveira. Well, he was riding well. The advantage of the two leaders is almost the 1 minute mark. As we move a little bit further up, Danny Navarro paying now for all of the aggressive moves he made. Pierre Rolland, well, he's an awful lot further back at 1:22, 3 minutes 10 back to Nibali, and 8.5 minutes to the yellow jersey.
These are the leaders heading up to the summit of the Grand Colombier, and this is Ilnur Zakarin and Rafael Majka. Majka wants the 25 points, 1 kilometre to go. He's building a nice foundation for a second victory now in the King of the Mountains competition. Serge Pauwels leads the remnants of the group. Looks there's only 8 of them there now. Meanwhile, Aru trying to bow to Astana's audacious move here. It's good to see them take on the Sky Boys, give them a bit of their own medicine. Sky have been content to set the pace and control the race. Nobody's challenged them. At last, Astana are trying.
Well, the idea is to put plenty of damage and plenty of pressure onto Team Sky and stop Team Sky setting the tempo that is comfortable for themselves. But in the leading group now, there's a lot of damage being done, as there is all of a sudden a fair amount of damage being done in the yellow jersey group. And if you look behind at the faces of these riders, that's Wouter Poels in 3rd position for Team Sky. They are now being put up against the ropes.
Not far to the summit now. Mike has taken second wheel behind Zakarin, who seems to be on a great day today for Katusha. It's Serge Pauwels, Dimension Data, the Belgian rider, setting the pace for the chase group of 8 riders that should be here.
Yeah, well, interestingly, there are 2 riders in there from Team AG2R, Tom Dumoulin. No, sorry, this is Warren Barguil now. That's a bit of a surprise, and now he is in difficulty on a day when I thought he might be riding higher up in the overall standings. It just goes to show that all of a sudden Astana now are putting many of these riders into a spot of bother.
Yeah, these 2 riders have heard some big names there. Warren Barguil starting the day in 16th place overall in this race. Now lost contact. These are the 2 men taking the race to the top of Le Grand Colombier.
You've got a big gap as well, Phil, because they're almost up to the 1 minute advantage. Once they go over the top, they will start to pick up speeds again, approaching 50 miles an hour or so. Now look at this, Julien Alaphilippe. I saw the move coming out to the top there. He's hidden in that little group for a few moments, and he thought, right, when I go over the top of this, I'm a pretty good descender. I might be able to bridge that gap.
Alaphilippe chased by Pozzovivo at the moment. Reichenbach is the 3rd man with the most to gain in this breakaway. Still the best part of 8 minutes ahead of the Froome group. Now it's a very, very tricky descent as we go down to the basement, through the finishing town of Culoz, and then back up the mountain as well.
Having a look down there, I think that in fact is Alexis Villermoz, who is an exceptional. Look at the second acceleration from Julien Alaphilippe. Phil, this is the guy that we've watched a couple of times in the last couple of years at the Amgen Tour of California. He's had his ups and downs. I mean, what a dramatic crash he had in the individual time trial. And now he said, right, okay, I want to win this stage. France hasn't had a win so far in the Tour de France this year, but maybe it's going to be me.
Well, he rides for a Belgian team. He is very, very much French, and people say that in the long-term future he could be a winner of the Tour de France. But at this moment in time, France badly need a stage win. He's got a problem up front at the moment. He's got to run down 2 riders, and there they are.
Well, not that much of a problem, because he's eating into that advantage. He's already knocked 10 seconds off. The reason he made the move, Phil, I think, was to get up towards the top of the climb with a 30-second deficit maybe on the 2 leaders, and he will take some risks on the descent.
Well, the crowd coming in on that bend there. Let's hope they pan out for the rest of the race. Not far to the summit now. Majka wants the points. Here we go. Rafael Majka gets the 25 points. 20 for Zakarin. And that has now given Majka 112 points, plays 90.
Well, how amazing, Phil, to see this young kid, 24 years of age. Yes, maybe he's riding for a Belgian team, Ethics Quickstep, but he's trying to open up the account of France in this year's Tour de France. As we go over the top, he's already 30 seconds, well, 29 seconds to be exact, behind the two leaders. And I think he's got the ability, coming from the cyclocross background that he's got, to close that gap on the descent.
Well, this looks like a spot of bother now for Luis Leon Sanchez. He did a lot of work up there, but he's now hanging on in the group as they continue. There's still quite a way to climb up. There's Adam Yates now on the back of this select yellow jersey group. Don't like to see him on the back of this group just now, but he's still there and with them.
Well, many of the experienced professional riders, Phil, said this could be one of the most difficult days of the Tour de France. Well, when we looked at Adam Yates there, he's still in with a very select group of men. Number one there, Chris Froome, this strange gangly style of his, always looking down. Just in front of him, all of a sudden, is Nairo Quintana.
And the gear on Chris Froome's bike is a 38 inside ring and a 28 back sprocket, slightly different to what the other riders have chosen. And he's just got a bit of a gap there as we go back up to the front runners here.
Well, Jarlinson Pantano, I don't know where he came from, but now all of a sudden he's come right across that gap and he's joined Julien Alaphilippe in third and fourth place on the road. Let's not forget there are still two leaders a little bit further up. And of course, that was the two men who made the move. Here they are. This is the man in the yellow jersey of Tinkoff. He's got himself a big points over the top of the climber, Zakharin. But that gap now, Phil, between them and the two chasers is down to 23 seconds.
19 kilometres to go downtown, see the finish, and then get back up the mountain for the final lap of 23 kilometres. Alaphilippe is a very, very good downhiller, and it looks, from what we're seeing here, so too is Pantano as he drives on. That might be a welcome arrival by Pantano.
Well, Dylan van Baal there from the Cannondale Drapac team. He was in the breakaway for a long time this afternoon, is about to see the heads of state of the sport of professional cycling as all of the big boys now start to come to the front. Most of the leaders are in this group, but they're put into a long line, and it's not a lot of fun when you look across to the right-hand side, Phil, and see just how far you've got to go.
Beautiful showing of the Grand Colombier here, the mountain with 4 rows to the top. As we now see at the end of Henao, he's worked very, very hard to keep Froome in the action, but the legs have paid.
Oh no, sorry.
No, it's Van Baal again. This is, it's Van Baal. He's gone right through the pack now. He'll just get home.
Well, this, I think, is the only tactic that anybody who wants to win the Tour de France can adopt. Go out there and give Sky a rough, hard time, and that's exactly what Astana have waited to do. But maybe on the next climb of the day, we'll start to see the black and green jerseys of Movistar do the same thing as well.
It's the only way they're going to beat Sky, and everybody acknowledges they have the best team in the bike race, so you've got to use all your riders to try and beat them, and they're giving them a rough ride. But I think Sky were expecting this today, and so far they are up for it.
Well, they're just about to move the red car of the referee out of the gap, and that means that the two chasers are not far behind. Race Radio is saying it's just 19 seconds, and I would think that Jarlinson Pantano, a winner of a stage in the Tour of Switzerland, and Julien Alaphilippe are taking some crazy risks to try and get themselves back to the front.
Just taking a look here now, Louis Meintjes is rider 157, a youngster from South Africa on the Lamprey squad. He's still right up in that yellow jersey group. He's tagged on the back wheel of Adam Yates there. These four should come together. It's a long way down and then a little flat before we start the climb again. Mike has had a great day out, and so too has Zakharin. I've never seen him ride so well. This is the chase, trying to make you fall up front.
Well, you can just see through the shade here, just around the corner, the jerseys of the two riders there. They're chasing the lime green fluorescent jersey of Rafael Majka. Really shows up in this shaded part of the descent. That gap now is not much more than 10 to 12 seconds. These two are not taking too many risks on the descent. They're just cruising down there, which is why I'm very much convinced that the two chasers will shortly make the junction.
Tough climb this. You see how exposed it is. It just lies on the edge of the mountain. The forest cut away many years ago. As we look over at the lakes that abound in this region, And we raced right around. Well, the race has been very close to following that lake right to the far end, which is where Culos is, and then back over the mountain again. Here they come. Now we have 4 riders up front. We've got 26 miles to go, or 42 kilometers to ride to the finishing line. Yes, now a long, tricky descent. The leaders, of course, are 8 minutes down it. 7:45 the gap over the top for the Maillot Jaune group, but that's the all category 1 behind the race now. It's all eyes down to the bottom, and then we come on the same mountain from the other side.
Well, as we start to see now coming down the other part of the descent, this is the riders who are just chasing to try and get themselves back into the contact with the 4 leaders. The 4 leaders, Zakarin and Mike, have been joined by Jarlins and Pantano and Julian Alaphilippe.
Ready? 7.
Well, these 2 chasers, they're at just 20 seconds. Pierre Roland, you losing a huge chunk of time at 1.5 minutes. And the group of Vincenzo Nibali, well, he's almost about to get picked up by the yellow jersey group because he was 6 minutes behind. These are now the 4 riders who lead. Micah for Team Tinkoff. He's got a huge advantage in the King of the Mountains competition, where he's laid down those foundations today. He has now amassed 117 points, and that is up against Thomas de Kent, who has 92. Beautiful part of the world now as we look at 37.5 kilometers to go. It's a long descent now onto the finishing circuit. The riders will drop down, go through the finishing line. The crowd here are all lined up ready and I spoke to one of the local residents here, Phil, this morning. He couldn't believe that the Tour de France was finishing in his street. He says, this is something I've never seen before, and I'll probably never, ever see again.
Nobody's seen it before. We've never been to Culos before, but what a delightful part of France it is. It really is. As now the riders have hit out today, they were waiting for that last climb. They've done what they planned to do. Now can they repeat it after the next climb, which twists its way up? Mostly we've gone up to 1,500 meters on the big climb. The next climb only takes us up to just under 900 meters. Then we swing away back towards the finish, but the descent is very, very dangerous, or so we're told. I haven't personally seen it, as they run back down to the finishing line. So a lot of skill required on the race down to the line as a bottle jumped off.
You see how
I hate seeing that, Paul. It is so dangerous.
Yeah, that Zakarin was a rider who lost the bottle there, and it pretty much exploded going down the descent there, with water getting spread everywhere.
Well, as the riders continue to descend down towards Culos.
Well, as they take the risks on the descent down into the valley below is where they're headed to, and we get a chance to look at some of the speeds here. The head of the race is touching 62 kilometers an hour. The yellow jersey group further back, they're doing 57 kilometers an hour. The 4 leaders, and I have to say, great ride by Julien Alaphilippe. This is Serge Pauwels, the rider at the back here. He's with Sebastian Reichenbach, and he could be making the great operation on today, because he started this race quite a way down in the overall classification. He was 17th overall at 11 minutes and 41 seconds. Take 7 or 8 minutes off that time down towards the end of the day, and he will be well ensconced inside of the top 10, and he will now end up being the new leader of Team FDJ. Oh, you see how tricky these corners and descents are? Well, I can just tell you, because the next time down here is once they've gone up through the lacettes of the Grand Colombier. You just see how tricky these corners are. Serge Pauwels, he made the acceleration going around that corner, and he's opened up the gap quite dramatically. 7.5 minutes.
Well, I have to say, while Zakarin struggles down that mountain, Paul, he is not a great descender, and Astana continue to push their attack as well.
Well, let's not forget, Phil, that he had a very nasty crash in the Giro d'Italia, and he certainly doesn't want to crash again at moments like this, because when I spoke to his team before the start of the Tour, they said he's come here to get himself ready, like so many other riders, for the Rio de Janeiro Olympic Games. Oh, I tell you, this is a dodgy descent here, and the fact that the road is a little bit melted makes it even scarier.
Well, we're in the deep forest area now of the descent of the Grand Colombier. Remember, about 23.5 kilometres to go. We'll go through the town of Culos and back up this climb from a different angle. Take your hat off to Astana today. They've done what they promised they would do. They've tried to weaken the grip of Team Sky, and they're doing something no other team has done in the 15 days of this tour.
Well, it just goes to show there's no fear, and they see this right over the last week of the Tour de France. Every opportunity is a good opportunity just to chip away at Team Sky, stop them being so dominant, stop them taking the initiative of setting the tempo that they want to set, and then make it that little bit more uncomfortable for them.
The front runners here, freewheeling down. This is Micah.
Just looking to see. In fact, there's a rider missing, and Race Radio is saying Julien Alaphilippe has actually gone around the corner ahead of these two guys. We do know, Phil, that Alaphilippe is a brilliant descender.
Yep, you're right. We said earlier he's a very, very good descender. He's showing no nerve at all. Unlike Ilya Zakharin, who has lost the control at the front because he can't descend. And he's been doing some pretty dodgy corners, I have to tell you. This is Reichenbach, further back.
But in front of him, Serge Pauwels, who he started the descent with. And as you can see, Serge Pauwels is taking a lot of risks on these corners because he too wants to try and make the junction with what was initially a four-man leading group on the descent before we ride across the valley floor. And guess what, Phil? We go back uphill again.
We do indeed, as we rejoin the leaders here. This is Micah trying to keep up with Wielemans.
Well, there is confirmation. We didn't actually see it, but when we came back to these two riders who are riding in front of Moto 1 at the Tête de la Course, the head of the bike race, Julien Alaphilippe had jumped away. His speed as he goes into the corners slowing down a fraction, but still very high speeds on this descent, 55 to 60 kilometers an hour. While the group of the Maillot Jaune, the leaders group, they're reporting speeds of 84, 85 kilometers an hour. That's 50 miles an hour downhill.
This is Pantano here with Raphael Micah. And I'll tell you what, Alaphilippe has disappeared off the front now. He's made an incredible descent of this mountain. He's going to go on to maybe the last climb of the day on his own. He's still got a few kilometers to get down to Culos.
Well, they're now pretty much away from the descenter. Just in front there, you can see the red car. That's the car of the referee. I'm just trying to peer around that red car as well to see if I can see the black and blue jersey of the Ethics Quick-Step rider. And I'm sure that's pretty much where he is. These two now are in second and third position on the road.
This is Reichenbach, who's now come up to Zakharin and Wielemans and Serge Pauwels.
So we've got the race situation is two leaders, Jarlens and Pantano and Raphael Micah. Now that could be, Phil, an awful long time before the quick-step car gets up there to look after Julien Alaphilippe. He obviously wanted his own team bike back.
Well, these are the two front runners we have not seen. I don't know why we didn't see Alaphilippe.
There he is.
Alaphilippe now, down with his team car. Not sure where he is on the course, whether he's behind the group containing Zakharin and Reichenbach.
Well, he will be, Phil, because he will have had to wait a fairly long time because the race was splitting up when he had that mechanical problem or the crash that's being reported over Race Radio. Now, all of a sudden...
he's joined Reichenbach.
Yep, well, he's come back to this second group on the road. Well, what a recovery.
Well, this guy's running on adrenaline because just look at this. Alaphilippe now is scorching through this group.
Well,
because that's the back end of the group. That was Pontevivo down there as well.
Yeah, well, in fact, he's been caught and passed by two different groups on the road. So that group was a completely different group. That wasn't the second group on the road. And he's seen this as an opportunity to ride straight across.
Now, we're just giving you a replay of something. We're looking at the two leaders here.
There he is on the right there.
There he is.
And in fact, it was well, we will never know until a little bit later on whether there was an accident, but he certainly had a problem with his chain there, and he was trying to fix it by himself.
Well, 7:24 is the spread to the yellow jersey of Chris Froome's group. Micah now knows that these two are racing for the win today. Unless Alaphilippe can recover, he's actually a minute and a half behind these two riders right now. That's a real tough slice of bad luck.
Well, leaders, though, this is Rafael Majka. He's done a very good job this afternoon in amassing very big points out over the early climbs and then the outside categorized climb of the Grand Colombier, and I think he'd be quite happy to have with him the company of Yarlins and Pantano, the Colombian rider on a Team IM Cycling. The Colombian rider who recently finished in second place overall in the... Oh no, he was in sixth place overall in the Tour of Switzerland, but maybe more importantly, it was the stage victory that he got himself in that event. So a chance here to look at the different speeds, and still the yellow jersey group locked in at about 7.5 minutes. And again, we've got those turquoise jerseys coming towards the front. Astana, I just feel that we may well see a little bit of a move coming from Fabio Aru on the final climb of today's stage, the Lacet du Grand Colombier, and why not a move coming from Movistar as well, and Nairo Quintana. Well, confirmation now, the group containing Julien Alaphilippe is at 1 minute and 30 seconds. The gap between the leading two riders and the four chasers is up to about 50 seconds. So the group of Julien Alaphilippe is about 40 seconds behind them. And when they come into these long straights heading down into the finishing town of Culos, they may well just have them in their sights. Right, we're into the finishing straight now, and a chance to get a real exact position in the race.
Well, in 24.5 kilometres time, this will be 1 kilometre to go to the finish. Just one more climb up the Grand Colombier. We go up on a different road, dangerous descent before they run down to this approach to the line. Rafael Majka and Yarlins and Pantano have been in the front with riders, without riders, virtually all day.
Well, these two... Well, the reason they're going through the finish is because they climbed over the Grand Colombier. They dropped down into the finishing town of Culos. They go through the finishing straight. Then the organisers have very kindly have decided to add another nice little climb on the finishing circuit, and that is the first category climb of the Lacet du Grand Colombier. The two men we're looking at here, Rafael Majka and Yarlins and Pantano in second position, have a 52-second advantage over four chasers who are also being chased by another group out on the route of 13 riders containing Julien Alaphilippe, who had that, we're not sure if it was a mechanical incident or a crash on the descent, but certainly who was definitely stopped at the side of the road for quite some time.
You can hear the bell for one lap to go, 23.5 kilometres, and in fact Michael wants a drink here. Big occasion for the Colombian rider. Pantano, never ridden the Tour before.
Nice glimpse of the bell there, Phil. I hope it was
Lovely
one
bell.
of those Swiss cowbells that they might have brought across, because we're right on the border of Switzerland, and that's where tomorrow's stage is going to go as we go right the way down towards Bern. This is the...
Let's go back right to the front end of this race. We're about to start the climb that will take them out of town. The climb itself, when we get on it, is 8.4 kilometres long. Mike has had an absolutely brilliant day because he's taken a convincing lead in the King of the Mountains today. So he continues to climb with Pantano.
Well, the gap is coming down quite smartly now to this four-man chasing group. It's only 35 seconds between this four-man chasing group and the two leaders.
And Julien Alaphilippe is chasing as well with Udzatsky, all members of the original 30-man break, many of whom have now been caught by the yellow jersey peloton. Zakharine setting the pace down there from Reichenbach and Wheelmeros.
Well, these groups are all actually reducing their deficits on the two leaders, because it's now down to 1 minute and 20 seconds to the group containing Alaphilippe. But
now I'm just hearing that, yes, it is.